Welcome, everyone. This is the Grand Traverse County Ways and Means Committee meeting. This is a committee of the whole of the board, and we make recommendations to our full board meeting, which will be on Tuesday, November 24th at 7 p.m. If you have cell phones, could you please put those on vibrate or silent? We would appreciate that. Couple quick announcements. One is that Whitewater Township is having Ross come out tonight to do the septic treatment economic plan presentation. So hopefully we will be able to get through our agenda before 7 p.m. and if we're still lagging, I'll ask Commissioner Hooper to chair the rest of the meeting because I need to get out there. And for those of you that have not completed County Administrator Dennis Aloya's review, if you could try to make an effort to complete that either after the meeting or prior to the end of the week, we would appreciate that and we can get that behind us. Okay, first item is the call to order, and we have the approval of the minutes on October 20th of 09.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Hooper. Support by Commissioner Fleece. Discussion?
Are you talking about the ones that are in the packet here?
October 20th, 09 minutes.
Right. I'm not sure. Chris, did you make that change?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So you can just let them know about that change or approved.
Oh, okay.
He
Well,
has been corrected.
okay. That would be the first motion at the top of page 3, page 4 of our packet.
Okay.
Is inconsistent with the vote under C on the previous page, and so Chris has just fixed that, and it was Commissioner Inman and Commissioner Max Bowers' votes needed to be
Okay.
flipped.
All right. Thank you with that change. Any other changes in the minutes?
Wait a minute,
Commissioner Richardson.
could you explain that again?
If you look at the, the bottom of page
Notes,
2,
yeah.
3, you'll see that it says the 3 yes here were
In this,
Max Bauer, Stepka, and Richardson, but when you flip to the result box,
oh, I see.
it's inconsistent
Okay,
with that.
all right.
So.
There's one other really minor point.
Yes.
Under Section A on the first page, it says we adopted the minutes unanimously, but I don't believe Commissioner Wheelock was here when we approved the minutes, so.
Right.
It's a really minor point, but, you know.
Oh, I see that.
Okay. Any other questions on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, passes. Now we have the closed session minutes of the October 20th that you have on your table. You've got a chance to review those if you could for a few minutes, for those that haven't looked at them. It's a one-page summary. And we'll let you look at those here and take a quick look at those.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the closed minutes from October 20th.
Moved by
Support.
Commissioner Wheelock. Support by Commissioner Hooper. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, passes. All right, we need to send those back so we can give them to administration. Moving on to item 2, which is public comment.
I had one question before
Yeah,
that.
Commissioner Richardson.
When are you going to review the agenda? Is that after public comment or before?
Do you want to, it's not part of our agenda, but we can do that,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, the only thing I would like to do is, under number 6, referrals, A talks about road commissioner retirement benefits,
Yeah.
and 7, new business is election of county road commissioners. Could we combine that into one discussion?
Sure.
So just move
Yeah, I'll just make it a
7A up to
subsection of
6A?
that.
Is that all right?
Okay, that would be great. All right. Any other comments on the agenda? All right. Moving on to public comment, this is a time in our agenda that we ask the public if they have anything they'd like to say to us. Now would be the time. And we'll take them by the hands going up. And if you could state your name and if you can keep them within 3 minutes, we would appreciate it. So we'll go with you first and then John second. Okay.
My name is Jim Pasco. I live at 358 Sierra Drive in Blair Township. I've been reading in the papers a lot of the commentary on the subject of road commissioners, whether we should have 3, whether we should have 5, whether we should have fringe benefits or not have fringe benefits. Well, as a taxpayer and as a businessman, and for 35, 40 years, I can understand where you look at any situation where you have part-time employees, you want to keep them. Part-time employees, like road commissioners, you want to attract talented people to it. But as a taxpayer, especially in these economic times, I cannot support any way the idea that you can pay benefits to part-time people. I could never do it when I was running a business, and I certainly don't see how the county can afford to do it now when I know people who are losing their jobs. Maybe every couple of weeks I hear of someone else who I happen to know personally. This is, even if it was felt it was the right thing to do, this is definitely the wrong time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. John Nelson?
John Nelson, 4022 Incochee Crest Commons in Garfield Township. This was not planned, by the way, the gentleman and myself, but I speak to the same issues, 6A and 7A. The elected school board of TCAPS oversees a budget of $90 million plus and a huge staff, hundreds of people, and they receive no compensation. That's public service. What brought me here this evening was the talk about a millage for roads. There's no one in this area that supports public infrastructure more than myself. But I don't think I could support a millage for roads when we have the compensation package that we have right now for our road commissioners. And so I, again, as I did at the last time I came here, would implore you to look again at that compensation package and perhaps some other packages around the county as far as compensation in these hard times, as the gentleman very rightly said, or just prior to myself. So thank you very much for listening.
All right, thank you. Any other members of the public wish to speak at this time? Hearing none, we will close public comment.
I have
Go-
public
Commissioner
comment.
Richardson? Yes.
Yeah. This concerns the health insurance plan that the county passed. We passed at our last board meeting in October, and before that, at our last Ways and Means meeting, we had a 45-minute presentation by Terry Root of Great Northern Benefits. It's a little over $5 million package that the county, that we agreed to in late October. As someone who voted on that contract, I'm very concerned that two key pieces of information were not provided this board at the time that we were considering this. The first piece is that Great Northern Benefits is co-owned by Walter J. Hooper, who is a road commissioner appointed by this board and whose salary we set. And I would refer you to an opinion by Alan Schneider, the prosecuting attorney here, of September 15th, 2008, where he suggests that Mr. Hooper should be required to basically give us notice of his relationship before soliciting the contract with Grand Traverse County. And the second piece of information that was not provided was that Dennis Aloya himself is a member of the board of Priority Health. I understand Priority Health. I understand he is not compensated for this, but he is still a member of the board. And of course, so over $4 million of that contract was with Priority Health to provide the health insurance to the county.
So you're basically stating that as just as information at this time?
I'm sorry?
Are you just basically giving us?
I'm just making
your
public
information?
comment here, Larry.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we will reopen public comment. Don't say that we aren't flexible. Take your hand, if you could keep within 3 minutes, that would be great.
This is going to be short.
Okay.
Do I have to give my name?
It would be helpful if you would.
Okay, my name is Faye Brown, and my comment is not for Ross Richardson, Beth Friend, and Michael Stepka, or Christine Maxbauer. This is for Sonny and his merry band of bandits who are robbing the people. How do you have the audacity to do what you are proposing? I think it's outrageous, and I think you should be run out of town on a rail. That's all I have to say.
Any other members of the public wish to speak? Okay, now we will close public comment. We'll move on to presentations. We have the Employee Recognition Team presentation, page 12 in your packet. And why don't you come on up and get yourself reintroduced to the folks at home. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Carol Bradway from Human Resources.
And I'm Mandy Lear from Circuit Court Records.
Mr. Chairman and the Commissioners, we were asked to be here tonight to give you a presentation about our team, our initiatives, our accomplishments, and our goals. We are members of the Employee Recognition and Service Award Team or Suggestion Award Team. Every month at Ways and Means, you're kind enough to sign these letters that are sent to employees who are celebrating significant milestone service anniversaries with the county. And I appreciate you taking the time to do that because it does add that nice personal touch, and I know that the personal signatures are appreciated. But did you ever wonder where these come from and what they're all about and what other methods we have of recognizing our hardworking staff? Well, these are the individuals that are responsible. And I think I can speak for all of our team members. We're much more comfortable working behind the scenes than being in front of a microphone and giving a presentation. But this is the hardworking team that is diligently at work to recognize our employees. We're especially appreciative of Beth Friend's appointment to our board. It's been a lot of fun having her, and she's offered good input.
I have to pay her to say that.
We typically meet the second Thursday of every month at 9, but we are flexible and we add special meetings as needed. We have a twofold mission to recognize and encourage employees for their dedication to quality service and submission of constructive ideas. Sincere thanks never grows old. Mom always said, remember to say please and thank you. Mark Twain is quoted as saying, I can go for 2 weeks on one good compliment. A recent national study affirms the fact that receiving appropriate recognition and rewards is of ongoing importance to employees. The report notes, employees want visible evidence that their contributions are noticed and appreciated, and while they certainly want to be paid fairly, they are equally clear about the importance of non-monetary recognition as well. Our recognition program here at Grand Traverse County is a combination of both, and here are a few of our initiatives. For our new employees, they are traditionally invited to a Breakfast with the Chairman event. Historically, this is held quarterly, and we invite not only new employees to get to know our current board chairman, but also we invite employees who are celebrating 15, 20, 25, or 30 years of service, and also any suggestion award recipients for the quarter. These congratulatory note letters that you sign every month are part of our Milestone Service Program, which recognizes employees on their significant service anniversary levels, like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25-year levels. Included is your letter and an invitation to select a gift from either a local vendor, at the 5-year level for county shirts or vests or jackets, or a tiered level gift from a vendor in Grand Rapids for 10 years and above. An improvement this year was to place all of these gift selections on our internal website, so we direct our staff to go there to make their selections. The employee can choose to receive a gift or not, or to provide details for an article for the newsletter or not. We respect their wishes. We realize that some employees prefer not to receive the fanfare and instead would prefer a more private or understated means of recognition. And we also have designed a means for supervisors to recognize their employees in a more understated way as well. I'll cover that in just a moment. We also have our Caught Doing It Right program. That's been an ongoing program for 10 years now. Forms are submitted for inclusion in our newsletter, and I've included in your black folders a few of those forms, and I would encourage you to use them. Submit them to HR when you catch someone doing it right. The annual service recognition note cards, and I've provided a sample in your folder as well. These are note cards that we prepare a month in advance of the employee's annual service recognition anniversary. The note cards are stamped and hand-addressed to the employee's home address and are distributed to participating department heads. These are returned to HR, and then we in turn mail them out 1 to 2 days before their anniversary. This is that more quiet or personal way to express thanks to our staff. We also have our Devoted Service Recognition Program, formerly called the Retirement Gift. Now, many of us have often thought about getting your clock and you're out the door. Well, since then, we've redefined retirement now with our defined contribution plan. It's no longer under defined benefit anymore. So the whole definition of retirement has changed. So we've elected to change the name of the program to Devoted Service as a focus on the years of service rather than retirement per se. Now, these black folders that you've been handed are examples of what we will be giving to employees when they separate from county service after 20 years. The folder will include information about the gift options they have, either the traditional clock with the engraved plaque, or we're excited about this new addition. They will have the option of selecting a picture of a county work site, one of our many buildings, of their choice, and an option would be to have signatures sign the mat around the frame. These are a few of the pictures that we've already compiled and will be part of that program. Many thanks to Sarah Adams and her husband for doing the photo shoots for us. They're turning out very lovely. We also have a presence on the web. Some of you may have noticed on the upper right-hand sidebar of the county's external site a section entitled Applause, Applause. And it's our intent here to feature letters of commendation or letters of thanks that we receive from the public. And you'll want to check out the current one. I thought that was really pretty neat. Employees can also learn about events and initiatives from our website. They can submit suggestions, view our work plans. They can also learn about employees' recent marriages, recent births, retirements, and promotions. It's kind of a way to get employees to interact with each other and be up to date with each other. We also have Coworker Appreciation Week and the Go the Extra Mile initiative. The Coworker Appreciation Week is in its 4th year. This began as a way to encourage peer recognition and showing appreciation through acts of thoughtfulness and kindness. This year it's scheduled to be held the week of December 7th through 11th. The types of things we like to encourage during this week are sending anonymous notes of encouragement, making coffee for a coworker, which is something I really would appreciate, or even brushing the snow off a coworker's car at the end of the day. Not so important to us now, but in December, that's a pretty big thing. This week culminates with the day that our team distributes a simple treat of juice and donuts delivered to the various work sites. The Go the Extra Mile program grew out of that original coworker appreciation event, and we typically introduce this program at the Summer Wellness Barbecue, and we encourage employees to submit to us via the internal website the names of coworkers who they have observed through the months of August and December, giving that little extra to make a customer's visit to our facility smoother, making the whole office a better place to be because of their thoughtfulness or things like that. Not only are these featured in the County Communicator Weekly, but the name of the employee who was observed going the extra mile is entered into a drawing this year to be held on December 11th for two $50 gas cards, thus the tie-in with the theme Go the Extra Mile. Another important component of our team's mission is the Suggestion Award Program. And I know Commissioner Fleece had mentioned at the LNA meeting that he felt it was important that we encourage our employees to be looking for ways to save money, make our operations more efficient, and with a cost savings. We have such a vehicle in place, and this is the Suggestion Award Program that our team also implements. One of our goals, as reflected on the work plan, which I believe is included in the Ways and Means packet, is to review this program and its promotion. Now, this program has been in existence since 1992, and we have handed out approximately 20 to 25 awards since that time. It's pretty amazing. Now, one of the key conditions of receiving an award is implementation of the suggestion, and this I thought was kind of a cute cartoon. Now, of course, that suggestion to cut out all meetings is not going to work. But we have had some excellent suggestions that have been implemented. Some of those included utilization of a shredder that would shred confidential county documents at a cost savings, and also a change in our letterhead, which proved to be a significant cost savings. We currently have two pending suggestions that we're analyzing. One is an excellent suggestion to establish ATM locations throughout our facilities, probably closely associated with the courts. And that would be useful to not only our staff, but also our customers as well. And also the suggestion to put an area on our internal website for surplus supplies where departments can exchange extra chairs or a desk they're not using that another department might be able to use. We have many, many wonderful employees here at Grand Traverse County, and it's important that they be appreciated, encouraged, and recognized, both in tangible ways and in intangible ways. Like Mom always said, don't forget to say thank you. Sometimes it's the little heartfelt things that make all the difference in the world, and we'd like to thank you for supporting our team. And I'll leave you with this parting thought. A soldier will fight long and hard for a bit of colored ribbon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I just want to let you know, too, that Carol and Sarah do so much work for this committee. You can go to committee meetings and decide to do things, but it's really the work that happens in between them that's a lot of the work. And Carol and Sarah do a tremendous amount for this committee. I mean, just the file that she keeps for the hundreds of employees to keep track of their, annual dates and their service awards and so forth is pretty extensive. And wanted to mention that Marcia Johnson from the DPW and Sarah couldn't be here today, and but they had wished that they could. And I thank Mandy for coming as well. She takes all of our minutes, and so it's a great committee to be on, and they do a lot of wonderful things.
I'll second that. I used to serve on the Employee Recognition Committee, so you guys do great work. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we're going to move on to the trails. We have Bob Wellwater. And does Fred want to come up, or?
Couldn't be here, but I'll
Okay.
ask Ted to come up and
Okay.
join me
All right.
for part of the discussion.
All right, go ahead.
Good evening, Bob Otwell, 525 Washington Street, Traverse City. And again, thanks for having us. I stepped in and talked to Dennis a week ago and just talked about a couple different trail issues that we're working on, and he thought it might be a good time to just give a little background on TART. There are some newer commissioners and some folks that don't perhaps have all the history. I provided a letter that you should have dated November 11th. That just gives a little bit, gives our mission, and we were formed 11 years ago now. And it was basically to try to help our community. There was different trail endeavors going, both in Grand Traverse and Leelanau County. So the TART Incorporated was formed to kind of bring those organizations and the boards of all of those organizations joined together. Our mission, enriching the Traverse area by providing an interconnected network of trails, bikeways, and pedestrian ways, and encouraging their use. You should have a drawing that kind of shows the system, shows the two bays. It goes from Acme to up towards Sutton's Bay and down into the southern part of the county. You have that drawing? Yeah. And again, tonight we're going to talk more about sort of the heart of the system, the Boardman Lake Trail, the developing trail out into sort of the city Garfield Township interface, but we've been working with Elk Rapids a little bit to try to extend the trail up to Elk Rapids, extend the TART Trail up. We've been working with the Kingsley area over quite a few years. We see Kingsley as sort of the focal point to connect the Cadillac area with Traverse City, and Cadillac is already connected with a non-motorized trail all the way to Grand Rapids and all the way to the Tri-County area, the Tri-City area. And so Kingsley is more recently been involved in trying to get some trails just within the village itself, and then we hope to extend that both up to Traverse City and both south into Wexford County to Cadillac. We've had some meetings with Green Lake and Blair Township in terms of extending a trail out in that direction, along with Benzie County, because the hope for, there was a rail line that runs past Cherry Growers where the rail line stops now and continued all the way to Thompsonville, which was, as many of you know, was a real railroad hub at one time. Much of that property is in state ownership and is still available. There are some private pieces, so we're working with both people in Green Lake and Benzie County to try to find an alignment to connect the Betsy Valley Trail that is in Thompsonville up into our sort of developing trails along the river. Something else that we're just getting involved in, it's not in Grand Traverse County, but a 26-mile trail within the national park over in Leelanau County. And that also allows us, we have a trail that we own that goes from Traverse City up to Sutton's Bay. We hope to connect over to the Sleeping Bear Trail at some point, and the Sleeping Bear Trail could extend down to Benzie. So you're really developing quite a large loop there, quite a large sort of regional trail system, both for transportation purposes and certainly recreation as we move forward. The Sleeping Bear is just getting started, and that will probably be about a 10-year project to build that trail through the Park Service. We're working with both MDOT and the Park Service and the council governments on that project. So again, then I guess the last thing I would draw your attention to, you should have a map that shows Boardman Lake and some of the trails that are more local. The other thing that we're involved in on that map, there's some yellow lines that show bike routes. we can't extend the trails everywhere, but we would like to provide access for people in all the communities within the county and within sort of our service area. So we've started in the city, we've worked with the city to develop these sort of on-street bike route systems and have them all interconnected with with our trail system. As we develop this and as our trail system extends out into other parts of the county, we want to also extend those bike route systems, sort of with the hope that no matter where you live or no matter where you want to go, there'll be a trail or a safe bike route, sidewalks, just there'll be some sort of infrastructure that helps you get there, whether you're running or walking or biking or in some cases skiing, which is part of Ted's advocacy over the years. So again, that's sort of the general TART system. If we look at the purpose of this map is to highlight two projects that are underway. One is the Boardman Lake Trail that the county's been very involved in for the past 5 years, I think, since we built the first section on the east side. It's been a great partnership with the City of Traverse City, Garfield Township, and the county, basically sponsoring the local match of that trail. The expected cost to finish the trail, along with the bridge down on the south part of the Boardman River, is about $3 million. So if we continue to, even though we've been taking fairly significant steps, if we continue to take steps working with the trust fund, it could be 10 or 15 years to finish that trail. So we've looked at, are there ways to kind of speed that process up and finish that trail? At the same time, there's a developing trail that we've named, at least for now, and sometimes you name something temporarily and it sticks, but it's the Buffalo Ridge Trail that starts in town. It goes through the Commons, goes out past West Middle School, goes through the place where the buffaloes used to be, and maybe there's still some buffaloes there, I'm not really sure, back behind the Great Wolf Lodge there, and then continues down to try to connect a lot of the Garfield Township neighborhoods into those places I mentioned and into the developing trail system. All of the details of that trail have not been worked out, but we're estimating that's about $1 million to build that. Again, there's some Safe Routes to School monies available. There's some trust fund monies that would be available again. But what we would like to do is to work with an organization called the Trust for Public Land. They were involved when the city and Garfield Township first set up the Rec Authority in that ballot measure, which was, I believe, 4 years ago or 6 years ago, raised $7 million to do some conservation in that area. So we've got a proposal from them to do some research, finance strategies. The cost of that phase is a $5,000 cost that we are asking the 3 local units of government, the county, the city, and Garfield Township, to split those costs. So those costs would be $1,600, $1,666 per unit of government. And then the public opinion survey, depending on the results of the research into different ways to fund this, what they are experts at is going out and asking the community, if this is the project, what do you think about that? So they actually do a phone poll and help really make the decision, do we want to go for a bond? Do we want to go for a ballot measure, next November, or do we want to wait, or do we want to finance it a different way? So they helped with again, the Joint Rec Authority several years ago when that went forward, and they've also helped out in Long Lake Township. They had a successful purchase of some land out in Long Lake Township, I think 2 years ago, and they were also involved. So I'm here asking you for some help with that. And at the same time, we are on the same map, if you look at where the existing East Boardman Lake Trail comes down and hits South Airport. It's been a dream and some discussion and some study for many years to have a grade-separated crossing there. Ted Okerstrom and Fred Hoisington have been working over the past year or so to look at what kind of options, could take place. You should have another drawing that kind of has some spaghetti on it, looks at different options. It's fairly complicated there with the road, which is a boulevard section through part of that, and you've got actually 2 river crossings there. So we're also here to ask for some help. It looks like there's a good chance we'll get a $15,000 coastal zone management grant to do that feasibility study. And it's basically a study to hire an engineer, look at the work that was done 10 or 12 years ago and kind of determine the feasibility or sort of the best way to get from that East Boardman Lake Trail down basically to the current Y location that will be abandoned when they move out to this other trail. Other thing that's sort of interesting that is also happening, as the dams come out, peak flows can come up a little bit, so there will be some analysis on at South Airport Road of the hydraulic capacity that was, the hydraulics there were designed when the dams were in. And so as we move forward with that study, there could be some ways to put together a tunnel and a trail situation that could not only relieve some of the water issues, but also provide for a safe crossing of South Airport. So, and also and I know many of you are on physical resources, and that part of the project was presented to physical resources, I believe, a week ago. Also, the county Parks and Rec have looked at that, and they are supportive of that project. So again, we're asking for $1,600 that would be contingent on the city and Garfield Township also joining us to hire Trust for Public Land to look at different financing options for trails, and then $3,000 for the engineering feasibility study of how do we get across South Airport with the trail. So, Ted, is there anything?
Maybe there are some questions that you'd like to ask Bob now, and maybe I can help answer them. Do you have any questions?
If I could just clarify what you're requesting, and then we'll open up for questions.
Okay.
You're asking us for $1,666? Correct, for the first piece?
Correct.
And then for the engineering study our share would be $3,000?
Correct.
All right, so there's 2 requests that you're asking us to consider this evening.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And were these issues presented at Physical Resources for recommendation?
The engineering feasibility study was, the $1,600 item was not.
Okay.
Excuse me, I don't think it was. I think originally Fred Hoisington was planning on coming to present that.
Yes.
But then it was not presented because this presentation was going to happen
I just wanted to make sure that Physical Resources.
I don't think Physical Resources heard this.
I misspoke. I guess I misunderstood that. Yeah.
All right, now we'll open up to questions. Commissioner Richardson.
Yeah, well,
Bob, you said $3 million to complete the Boardman Lake Trail? That's just basically to go down the west side of the lake and connect back with the east side?
that's right.
Do you have any idea how much of that is property acquisition, or?
None of it is property acquisition.
That's just to build the trail?
Yeah. Just a couple of weeks ago, the city approved a license with the college, which quite a section of that whole west side is with the college. So there's one remaining property owner that we do not have an easement with, and we have sort of a verbal agreement he's still trying to figure out how to get access to that property. So that is not property acquisition, that is just to build the trail.
Okay. Does that involve building any bridges over the Boardman, or?
Yeah, there's a bridge at the south end. The reason for the cost, if you've been on the east side, there's areas where there's boardwalk, there's areas where there's retaining walls, and those numbers just, it's just the physical setting there. It just isn't easy to build a trail. If you know where Grand Traverse Packaging there, there's a railroad embankment that goes directly right down into the lake, so we need to do boardwalk on all of that section. So it's a significant amount of money, but again, it's just kind of because of the environment.
Yeah.
But it also makes it, if you've been on the east side, it makes it quite a special trail, because you're right.
I have been on the east side a number of
Yeah.
times, and it's,
Yeah.
it's very nice.
Right.
I really enjoy it. There was some sort of a engineering study or feasibility study done 10 or 12 years ago
Yeah,
on crossing South Airport?
back in the mid-'90s, some work was done with, I was involved just as a volunteer, and Joe Elliott from Gordy Fraser was involved, and the Boardman Valley Steering Committee, I believe,
Well,
was.
yeah. The Boardman Valley Steering Committee started about 30 years ago. And the county board suggested that I be made a chairman of it. Nobody has ever told me I'm through or fired me, so here I am.
That's funny.
But I'd like to just review something with you here that I have, and I think it'll explain in a little more detail where we are right now and what we hope to do in the future. As you know, we
And Ted, just so you know, I believe the board has the kind of a one-page document on it's kind of the cost sharing.
the board has this?
Yeah.
You think they have this?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, then you know the purpose of the funding, and you know that we have every reason to believe that Coastal Zone Management will come through with their 15,000, I think it was. And we have now Sarah Lee that has agreed to $1,000 to assist us. We know that Garfield Township has agreed to a $3,000 contribution towards this. And what we're really here to tell you is that we hope that the city and Garfield, or the county, will each contribute to $3,000. That would give us a total of the 10,000 plus Rotary. We are very hopeful that they will come through with a $5,000 grant for the feasibility study. That brings us up to date pretty much as to where we are. And I think that to make a long story short, what we're looking for is the help of the county and the city to join with Garfield in each contributing $3,000 each. And I have to say this in regard to the past, that I don't think that there has been any three governmental units in this town or in the country that have worked as closely and as successfully and cooperatively as you people have here in furthering the trail system. Particularly for us, on the east side, we went through a lot of problems, as you know, but every single property owner granted us easements over their land. Not a single one of them. And that went all the way around into the southeast corner.
Southwest corner.
And right on up, that's on the west side to the college. And beyond that, we didn't try at the time because we had other things to do. But I want to take this opportunity to thank you for all that you've already done. And we'd really like to finish this thing. It's a wall down there for me to ski or to bike on up to the end of the East Bay, East Side Trail, and there it is. We should be going through it one way or another, and there are a number of ways that it can be done, and it's really exciting, and the feasibility study is going to reveal a lot of things that I'm sure a lot of people haven't thought of. And one of our goals is to make sure that when we get through developing a feasibility study, we aren't going to have somebody in the back room say, why didn't you consider that when you were planning this thing? We're hoping that we can really reveal all of the possibilities and what is absolutely necessary to have it safe and serve the country into the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll open up to questions or motions or whatever. Commissioner Max Bauer.
Bob, it says in this letter that I have here that you've selected an engineering firm. Was that put out for bid, or did you just pick one?
It was put out for bid, and we got a committee together to review the bids and picked a local consultant.
Okay. And what engineering firm was that?
Gosling Zubik.
Oh, okay. The other thing that I have to say, and Ted and Bob, you're not going to like what I have to say. I can't support the $4,600, and I'm going to explain why. I talked to Fred Kiesler today about the state's budget for next year. $17,000 is being cut from the adolescent health clinic. $22,000 is being cut from family planning. Next year in the county's budget, we don't have police car vehicles for the sheriff's department that may need to be replaced. We simply can't do everything that we've done in the past. And honestly, we've got 3 feasibility studies right now that are sitting on a shelf. And I simply can't justify spending more tax dollars for yet another study. That being said, and knowing I felt that way, I did go down there. I've been down to that section of South Airport and Logan's Landing 4 times in the last week. I went at different times of the day. I went in the morning, I went in the afternoon, I went after dark. In every single instance, I had no trouble crossing. I either walked down to the light and used the light switch, which I know is an inconvenience for bicyclers. I bicycle, my husband bicycles, and it's an inconvenience. I wish we had the money, but I don't believe we do, and for that reason, I'm sorry, but I simply can't support giving you the $4,600.
Can I respond to that?
Hank, if we could hold for just for a second.
What's that?
If I could have you hold for a minute.
Sure.
To get what other
Oh,
questions
sure.
might be out there.
Sure.
Dennis, did we have a fund in reserve for trails or anything that was earmarked for this situation?
No, there was nothing earmarked for this, but every year we budget $10,700 for tar trail maintenance and things like that. We have estimated we have about $4,500 left in that this year. And then I had Dean look at the fund balance in the tar trail fund, and the fund balance in the tar trail fund has $53,298 in it.
Who controls the Tar Trail Fund?
Tar trail fund, yes.
Who controls it?
County board.
Okay. Other questions and then we'll take it back to Ted. Commissioner Richardson.
To a certain degree, to echo what Christine has said, what I mostly fear is, and $3,000 is not a lot of money, obviously, but we are feeling the pinch in very, very many different ways. But mostly what I fear is spending $3,000 for, a $30,000 study that eventually will end up gathering dust on a shelf. At this point in time, I can't imagine where you're going to get enough money to either put a bridge over or tunnel under South Airport Road. There is a light there. It is possible to cross. We have, in my mind, many other priorities, TART trail priorities that are higher than a feasibility study for some, unknown, payoff in the future. And I would just rather put the money into that. I would rather see you complete the West Boardman Trail and look at other, other things that aren't quite as expensive as trying to bridge over a 4-lane highway with a large median strip. So,
Ted, did you want to make a remark?
What was the last statement? I'm sorry,
I was just saying that I fear spending money on a study that then we can never accomplish because there's no money to accomplish what the study says we should do.
I see what you're saying.
I mean, that if we had a better idea that, funding was a possibility or there was a real need there, I'd be more interested, but to me it just looks like, I'm not sure.
I understand. And it's a difficult time, and I know you're against the wall on some of these things that are being brought forth, but I would like to just say this. This has been thought out and dreamt about for a good many years. When I flew over here the first time and looked at the beauty of this area and then imagined snow covering all of this, I had to believe that this was an area where the winters are beautiful, where the opportunities for year-round recreation are very strong, stronger than most other places. And that's been in the back of my head ever since. The idea is that and things are working for us. A lot of us are getting older, but we're still able to get out in the wintertime, and the middle of the week is as easy as it is on Wednesday or on the weekend. That a trail that we're developing and have really been stopped by Mother Nature I know that Mother Nature is challenging us on this because we've got things to think about, and you're right, beyond just skiing, and there's a way to get across that road by walking across. But this has to be a way for the skiing public to ski smoothly underneath or alongside of a river, maybe cutting through and out into the open country. And with that could come many, many winter activities beyond what we have here now. And it's an ideal situation for the development of a winter activity that I believe has the possibility of really making winter not quite as undesirable as some people think it is.
Commissioner Friend.
I have 3 quick things. One, I just want to be clear, Dennis or Dean, you mentioned that $10,700 is allotted for TART trail maintenance, did you say?
Yes.
And $4,500 is left. Was that slated to be paid
No.
out the rest of the year?
$10,700 was budgeted this year for TART trail maintenance. Typically what happens is it doesn't all get spent in a year. This year we did a lot of maintenance with volunteer help. So we replaced 1 bridge or 2 bridges? Do you know,
One long
Bob?
bridge.
1 long bridge over in East Bay. But we have 4,500 remaining this year. And over the years, we have accumulated a balance, a fund balance, that's not related to that 4,500, of $53,298. That's money that's just, every year we put $10,000 or so into that budget, and we only spend what we need to spend on maintenance, so it accumulates.
Oh, and that doesn't go just right back into your fund balance?
It stays in the
You're
TART
holding
fund.
that out?
I don't know the history of why they do it that way. Dean, do you?
It was a board resolution back a number of years ago to actually establish funding to replace the boardwalks and, to do the major trail work that would, eventually have to be done.
And I know, like, for example, we had, 3 years ago, I guess, 4 years ago, and then maybe 6 years ago, the city came to us twice for the Boardman Lake Trail and said, we'd like you to partner with Garfield and the city to match a state grant. And I think the first time it was either $100,000 or $150,000 from the county to match each of their same amount. And the second time it was $150,000 from the county to match their amount. And I believe last time what we did is we took part of it from fund balance that we had accumulated. And I can tell you, I don't know if Bob mentioned it, but the city's already approached me on the next phase of that project, and they're going to be back to see the county soon, asking for $150,000 more to go into the continuation of that city trail, that trail along the west end, I guess.
So of that $4,500, there are no outstanding balances payable to TART right now?
No, and we don't pay TART, we just actually pay for the improvements. In other words, we bought the wood, for example.
Okay.
But Dean and I were talking a little bit, we now pay for the lights that are in the county portion of the trail. We pay Board of Light and Power, but we think we have that covered. We budgeted money for that in that budget, so I think we have it covered. So we think there's about $4,500 in there this year.
Okay. The other thing is, what other projects have you done feasibility studies for, and how have you utilized them?
Well, on the feasibility study, we got a coastal zone grant to do I guess it was a feasibility study or a planning study for the whole Boardman Lake Trail. That was maybe 8 years ago. And, it really, it helped us with costs, it helped us to identify some of the challenges in terms of boardwalks and some of these things. And, we've built sort of the first half of the trail after doing that feasibility study.
Utilizing that study?
Using that study.
Okay. And then also I wanted to see if Commissioner Stepka had anything to add. I know that you're the county appointee on that.
I had a question for Dean or Dennis on that $53,000 in the TART general fund balance. Is that restricted in any way, or is there any money there that could be used for this project?
Well, this fund balance, actually, it's not in the county general fund, it's in our facilities fund, Fund 471. The restrictions that are placed on it have been placed on it by the county board. It's budgeted funds on an annual basis, and the unspent portion, based on the prior year resolution, we have been accumulating and setting aside or designating that amount specifically for the trails. It's an accounting thing that follows the function of the budget. It's basically board, I don't move that money around. It would require board action to use those funds.
Could some of that be used, though, for this project?
If we decide.
Pardon me?
I said if we decide.
Right. Okay.
Commissioner Richardson is correct.
Okay. And then a quick question for Bob. Is the older study still useful today?
On
that was done by
South Airport Crossing?
Yes.
Yeah, it will certainly, serve as a foundation for the project that we will be doing. But again, it's 13 or 14 years old, so I think part of the thinking is, and it was more of a, from a committee, it really wasn't, we didn't hire an engineer to do significant work. So certainly, some of the work can be used as the basis for this study. And then certainly, and you know, some of what you've been talking about too, certainly is, you know, where's the public on this? What is the public, you know, I think we certainly need to go out and there be some public input. Now, if I could also just add one thing, getting back to the sort of the financial research, is that if we went out for a ballot, say with the rec authority, like we did, or like the rec authority did before, there'd be both a capital function and an operational millage. There would be two millages. Because we see, you know, we really appreciate the county putting together some of this funds for maintenance. But as these trails get older, I mean, we definitely see that there's a need to set up another mechanism. And I think, you know, hiring these folks to help us with some of that finance research I think they can help. They've worked all over the country. I think they can kind of help us, you know, move forward, which not only helps us with the capital fundraising side. And again, if you do a ballot, then it's, you know, the public either wants this or the public doesn't. And I do have concerns, you know, of the city, county, and the township being able to come up with, you know, with $100,000 to match a trust fund grant. So I think going to something more like a bond or a ballot is just, you know, where we might be headed. And these guys are kind of experts at whether that's feasible or not. In the Grand Vision study, the part of one of the questions they asked is what are I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but basically, you know, greater access for walking and biking. 90% of the people in our sort of 5-county area that was important to them. So I think the time is right. It's obviously wrong in many ways, but you know, I think there is a large desire in our community to make these things better. So, but again, we need to hire some experts and help us figure that all out. So,
all set, Commissioner Stepka?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Wheelock.
Just have a couple comments. One, I think I've heard overwhelmingly from at least most of the people that I've talked to, they don't want to hear about us spending any money on any studies, period. You know, I think I've overwhelmingly heard that. We spend way too much money on studies that may or may not ever get used, and, you know, how many thousands of dollars do you have to spend for somebody to tell you this or that, which you should already know if you've done your homework. I know, being this board's representative to the Road Commission, that when Logan's Landing was reconfigured about a year ago, there was a considerable amount of effort and money spent in lighting and in technology to allow for the safe pedestrian crossings of South Airport Road. You know, no, you can't slide through there on your cross-country skis and go right on by, but as far as people wanting to walk, trail, hike, ride their bicycle, the capabilities are there. You know, it's interesting, I heard Dennis make the comment earlier about the city coming back, about the city trail. You know, many of my constituents have never seen this trail and probably never will in their lifetime or have any desire to. So why should they be asked to help pay for it? You know, there's 85,000 people in Grand Traverse County. I'm guessing maybe 10% of them have ever been on this trail. You know, so, and then that would be a very, very generous percentage, I think. You know, I think the fact is these trails are great. It's nice that we have them available, but, you know, whether, you know, when I was a kid, we rode our bike back and forth down the road, which, you know, in today's world isn't quite so safe, but, you know, there wasn't the option to go ride round and around Boardman Lake. You know, you want to get from one end of Boardman Lake, that's fine, but you may have to go one way and then come back the same side. You may not be able to ride around and around. I cannot support spending money on the study, and at least at this time, I won't support spending money on a trail.
Okay. Commissioner Friend.
Doesn't the, what is it, Buffalo Ridge Trail go right into Long Lake?
no.
It doesn't. It goes over.
No, it ends out sort of at Silver Lake and South Airport.
Okay.
So it's not, to Long Lake Township, you mean?
Yes.
No.
Long Lake Township does have some trails along the sides of the road which have been done through donations from the local foundation and things where they've actually, basically what they've done is created a widened shoulder on the side of the county road, which they have subsidized to the road commission.
Okay, does anyone want to send this thing with some direction here?
I just want to clarify one thing. I think it's a little bit of a misnomer to call the Boardman Lake Trail a city trail because it's half in the city and half in Garfield Township, so.
I don't think I called it a city.
No,
You didn't call it a city trail. Dennis did.
I think I did, but
And
what I was...
Sonny repeated it. I mean, yes, I do live in the city and it is within walking distance where I live, but it is more than just a city trail.
What I was referring to is the next section that they're going to be asking for is in the city. The next section is in the city, just like the last one was. That's where the $150,000 will go to. The next section is in the city.
Coming down
On
the west side from the north.
Yes, that's what I was referring to.
Okay.
You know, but I have seen people on that trail who are from East Bay Township, Acme Township, from different areas.
Yeah, it's a nice hike.
Well, if we can bring this to
I'll
some
make
level of
a-
conclusion, does anybody have,
I'll make
does
a
anybody want to
motion.
make a motion?
I'll make the motion that we fund $1,666 for research on the funding options and $3,000 for the feasibility study for a total county contribution of $4,666 to be paid out of the TART trail line item and any TART facilities fund.
Okay.
Support.
Support by Commissioner Stepka. Is there discussion? Commissioner Richardson.
Would you consider splitting the motion?
To the two different,
Yeah.
well, let's just see how it goes.
Okay.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
Is Heritage Estates, which is off Zimmerman Road in Long Lake Township,
No, it's in Garfield, it's my district.
your district? Okay. Okay. Because I do know that the Buffalo Ridge Trails plan to go up to service individuals in that subdivision. I thought that was part of Long Lake.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? Okay, roll call vote, please, Chris.
Commissioner Fleece,
No.
Friend,
Yes.
Hooper,
No.
Inman,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
No.
Richardson,
No?
Stepka,
Yes.
Thomas.
No.
Wheelock.
No.
Okay, motion does not carry.
Okay, so I'll split them and make the motion that the county fund the $1,666 for the, wait, I'm sorry, hold on a second. Is that the one you're looking for, Commissioner Richardson?
For the
That would be
feasibility
Trust for
study.
Public Land.
Yeah, what's that? Go ahead, yeah, go ahead and make it what you want then.
Do we hear a
Ross,
motion?
want to make a motion?
Go ahead.
Well, I've been, pawing through my paper and I can't find it. I can't find the part that addresses that. The $1,666 for the study with the Trust for Public Land, I would move that we approve that.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
All right, moved by Commissioner Richardson, support by Commissioner Friend. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call on this one as well.
Wheelock,
No.
Thomas. No. Stepka,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes?
Max Bauer,
No.
Inman,
Yes.
Hooper,
No.
Friend,
Yes.
Fleece.
No.
Motion fails. Okay, I appreciate you coming.
Could I ask two questions? For anybody to answer.
Well, we don't, go ahead, we can ask the questions, but we normally don't get into a
I might not get.
situation.
The Iceman cometh. Does anybody know how many actually came? What did the paper say?
4,000 participants?
Huh?
4,000
It was
participants.
4,000, that's right. Trails deal an awful lot with transient guests. What's your increase in total number of, estimated total number of increase in the number of skiers we had here this summer?
bikes and things?
Yeah,
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah. I mean, we estimate there's maybe 200,000 people that use our trails in the summer, over the summer.
All right.
Aye.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to move on to the 211 presentation by Steve Wade and Herb Lundquist. Thank you for coming this evening.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us to bring you an update on 211. For anybody's interest, just to let you know that 211, every hour, every day, someone in the United States needs essential services, from finding substance abuse assistance to securing adequate care for child or aging parent. Faced with a dramatic increase in a number of agencies, helplines, people often don't know where to turn. In many cases, the people end up going without these necessary and readily available services because they do not know where to start. You all have received an update, an executive summary that talks about 211 being able to be used for basic human needs, physical mental health resources, employment supports, support for older Americans and persons with disabilities. We also have support for children, youth, and families. Also community sports, especially when we have an epidemic, information such as we had with the H1N1, and also becomes available for Homeland Security. So the 211 Steering Committee of Northwest Michigan has come together, and you have set aside $20,000 for us to be able to get this started and implemented. We just want to bring you up to date as to what's really happening. Yesterday I received an email from SHAR-M, and that they have been awarded $30,000, so they're starting their process of getting 211 going forward. Manistee County has it. In your list of things that you got in here is also a map that shows you where 211 is and where it's going. I think it's really wonderful news. Also, I think it's really important to note that Martha Lancaster from SHAR-M has been put on the 211 board for the state of Michigan. So these are some of the things that are really coming along strong. Wexford County has now got them up and running. They all have a 800 number that they're in the process of putting together and doing. Grand Traverse County has done a collaboration with the five counties plus SHAR-M, so that gives us 7 counties, and when we get it all together, we will also be including Wexford and Missaukee counties. There is a group of people that have come together to make sure that this is happening. We have met, and we're in the process of putting a timeline together. We have done that. I've also sent you an email, I think yesterday, that gives you a link to go into Channel 2, that Steve and I were on Channel 2 and did a presentation on 211 as to what it is and where it's going. So I think it's wonderful to see what's happening. We also have put together a timeline. I'm not going to try and go through all this information that you have. I hope you've had time to read it. But to give you an idea of our timeline, that we need to do an agreement with Muskegon County, or Muskegon 211, and then that agreement needs to be done with third level to have the database up to date. United Way needs to sign to be a fiscal agent. Steve Board, I think, is going to be meeting in December to be able to do that. SHAR-M also will be part of the United Way of Traverse City to be their fiscal agent. We will have to do a communicator's guide in PowerPoint to be sent to us by Sherry, and she's done that. The time starts when the database is done and approved. So after that database is done and approved, it takes 6 to 8 months for us to get that all approved. Then 2 to 4 months for the Michigan heirs, for them to approve the data as to what's happening and how it's being put together. So all that is being done by our local third level agency. After that, then it's 90 days from submission for the Public Service Commission to give us the right to be able to have 211 in our county, or actually the 5 county areas. So then after that, 3 weeks for Muskegon 211 board to approve, and then we have to have the attorney to come in and get all the forms together. We have the option of trying to find a local attorney to be able to do that, or to be able to use their attorney to put it together. and that is done, I think he comps that time. But, we'd also like to look at maybe having one of our local attorneys to be able to put this together. Third level will be calling agencies and collaboratives to take the message that agencies can't be slowing the process. Once we start the process, getting that data from each of the individual agencies is the critical piece, so that we can make sure that all the data that goes into this program is correct. And it's got the same wording for every single agency, so that when Muskegon gets a call, they know what that agency is, what it's going to do, when it is open, whether or not it's got any of the services, any money available for that particular program that they might be recommending. So then after we get the database, then we will have a 1-800 number to be able to use, and hopefully that our implementation for 211 in Grand Traverse County will be February 11th, 2011. And I know this seems like an awful long time to be able to go forward, but there's a lot of data that needs to be collected, put together, and third level has a majority of it. It's just not all there. It could be shortened, but we don't want to say we're going to try and do it by a certain date and not be able to meet this guideline. We know we can do it by 2011, and so then we're going to start the drawdown of the $15 per head cash mats from Consumers Power that they have put together, $300,000. So that is some of the things we've got going for us on the timeline. And I just really would challenge each and every one of you that I ask for them to send me information about if you are going to be in need of services, and many people are coming together to be able to really need that. They've been laid off. Their mortgage isn't paid. They don't know how to handle the stress that's happening. So if you looked in your phone book, how would you find volunteer opportunities? How would you find tap water testing? How would you find housing choice vouchers? How would you find school clothing and supplies that are being given away? How about a runaway shelter? How about Medicare, Medicaid assistance? Holiday assistance and Christmas toys? Where do you go into the phone book to be able to find these things? How do you know what the phone numbers are? We don't know the phone number for third level. We don't know the number right off the top of our head for Women's Resource Center. We don't know off the top of our head the phone number for Goodwill Industries. I challenge you to find the Traverse Healthcare Clinic phone number in the phone book, if you don't know that that's what it's called, as Traverse Healthcare Clinic. It's not easily accessible. With 211, it can be found, it can be done, and it can be done on a timely basis, so we get the help to the people when they need it and at the best possible place. So Steve, if you would cover some of the funding of that, I would appreciate that for you to do that.
A year ago, we were before you, and at that time, you all allocated, as I recall, $20,000 out of the 2008 surplus. Seems like a long time ago when there were surpluses, but anyway. And one of the contingents of that was that we would put a plan together. This is that plan. We have been to the counties in the surrounding area, have received their support, unanimous support actually in each of those counties, for 211 going forward. We are in the process of going back to them, asking them for some financial buy-in. When they gave us their support, they knew we were coming back for financial buy-in. We have, as Herb mentioned, Consumers Energy has allocated $300,000 from their foundation to get 211 into the counties that are currently not served. That comes down to roughly $30,000 that will be available in our area. One of the challenges we have is that we have to be able to match that money. That's why we need to be able to pull down the county's money that was given last year at this time, because that will be used to bring the Consumers Energy money into play. What that's going to allow us to do is there are essentially phases of this. The first phase is the data collection piece, and it is unique in the state of Michigan that data collection is normally done by the call center. In this case, our call center is going to be in Muskegon. But Muskegon is actually contracting with third level here in Grand Traverse County to do that data collection. It's the only time in the state of Michigan where a local agency has been subcontracted to do that work. So actually, the money that we're spending isn't just necessarily going to Muskegon, it's coming back to Grand Traverse County and is being reinvested here with a local agency. And to me, that feels good. Once that data is collected, most of the data, as Herb mentioned, already exists for Grand Traverse County. For the outlying counties, it is mostly there, but there's some cleanup that needs to happen. That process will escalate. That's essentially phase one. Phase two, then, once that information is in place, we will be given a toll-free number, and the whole system will be up and running. The delay in actually getting a 211, that 3-digit number, has to do with applications through the federal government and with AT&T and some of the, just all sorts of governmental things, and that process takes an additional year. But people will begin to be served by the data that is collected within the next year, hopefully as early as this fall. So that's the plan. We're also looking at some other foundations that we're going to be applying for funds. And I think it's also important to note that the money that was already allocated out of the surplus from 2008, we plan on that sustaining this initiative through phase one and phase two. So we are not planning to come back to this commission to ask you for additional funds in the next 2 years. That $20,000 that was given at the time, we thought that we would have to use that all in year one. It's now going to extend over 2 years. Through those first two phases until we get 211 operational. We have some additional plans with our steering committee, and we have all sorts of community partners throughout the 7-county region, including health departments, the Human Service Collaboratives, North Sky, Rotary Charities, United Way. It kind of goes on and on from there. The idea is that we are looking at some creative opportunities for the sustained funding of this. Beyond those years. Some of it has to do with foundations. Some of it even has to do with what you might even consider a fee for service. An example, and those people from DTE who are watching, it's an example. We might be able to go to DTE and say, if you would help sustain 211 in our community, there would actually be a cost savings to you. Because if the people who are in arrears on their utility bills were able to access 211, first of all, they may not go into arrears because they would be able to access budget counseling. If they were having trouble with, there are programs to help with foreclosure prevention, they might be able to access food pantries that would then be able to take money that the family is spending on food that they could apply to the utility payments. And there is data. 211 has been in operation in some parts of our country for as many as 6-7 years. And so there's already some data that indicate that some utility companies are actually seeing a decrease in their uncollectibles because of the effect of 211. So we're looking beyond just the public sector as the funding source, looking into the private sector and beyond for the sustainability of it.
Steve, could you clarify for me the request that you're going to be making to this committee? Are you asking us to draw down on the $20,000 we have in reserve this year and make that appropriation, or are you asking for a commitment for next year, or are you asking for a part of it now and part of it later?
There's an interesting answer to that question, in that the reason we're here is because we received a phone call from the county saying, we'd like to help, as I understood the phone call, we want to sort of get this cleaned up, and we would like to get this $20,000 off our books and get it invested in at work. Now, Mr. Bach can probably speak to that a little better than I can, but that was my understanding of the intent. If you all are comfortable holding the $20,000 and us coming in asking for it either in, piecemeal increments, we can do that. If it's easier for you to sort of say, we will give this money or release these funds to be used, and the United Way is going to step forward and be the fiduciary for this process. We are doing that, and I need to be clear about this, at no charge. There is no administrative fee, there is no percentage, there is no nothing. We are, any dollar that comes in for 211 is going back out into the investment of 211, not a paperclip, not a salary, not a light bulb, nothing. So if you have that concern, and we do that for other organizations as well, PRI most notably, And if you have concerns about that, I'd be glad to give you our audit, and you can check our trustworthiness on that. So, Commissioner Inman, in answer to your question, I think it is what is most convenient for the county at this point. But we are ready to start to implement this, and when we sign a contract in December, hopefully, with the Muskegon Call Center, we're going to need to start pulling down those funds so that we can access consumers' match. So whatever works best in your system.
Okay, Commissioner comments. Commissioner Friend, and then Wheelock, and then Richardson.
So I want to be clear on this funding. So you're saying you'll deal with the flexibility of the county, but do you need, $20,000 between now, which is, November of 2009, and the end of 2010? Or, what is that amount between the rest of the small fiscal year this year and 2010?
The money probably won't change hands until 2010.
Okay.
When the contract officially gets signed. I mean, I'm alarmed by how quickly we're running out of time in this year. So, but I mean, and there isn't anything about the clock that is important to this, except the sooner we get started, the sooner we get it implemented. And so when we sign the contract, we're going to need to exchange money with Muskegon at that time. The consumer's money will then come into play, and so exactly how much of that 20 we will use at that time,
But it's a max of 20.
it's a max of 20.
A max of 20.
Right, and there's not there isn't a scenario out there where we come back and say, well, 20 wasn't enough, we need
And 30 or
21,
40,
22,
okay.
and the meter starts running upwards from there.
Okay.
Beth, I think it's really important to note that money will probably go down to Muskegon, but it'll immediately come back to Traverse City, because third level will use that money to do their database. They will hire a staff person locally to put the database up and running and to connect with all the other agencies in the community to make sure all the data is correct. And that's what that money is going to be used for.
Okay, and Dean, they mentioned that 20,000 was allocated in 2008, correct? And where is that being held, and what fund, so forth?
The 20,000 was a commitment, a board resolution designating 20,000. I have not made any budget amendments to set that funding aside. The request was to find out where we were at in the process to see if we have to make a formal commitment or designation here in 2009 before we close our books, and it sounds like, we may need to do that if we continue. There is no amount budgeted at this point in time for that.
For 2010.
Well, for 2009 or 2010.
Right.
But there is the board resolution that committed 20,000 in funding for this project if it went forward.
Okay, so where are those funds coming from if we?
Well, the board resolution designated that come out of surplus, so it would be the county general fund balance.
Okay.
All set, Commissioner Friend? Okay, Commissioner Wheelock.
I think if my memory is correct, which sometimes it is and lately I'm not sure, but if my memory is correct, in November, December 2008, the board made a commitment to fund up to $20,000 for the study and establishment of 211. At that time, we've seen an overwhelming, discussion and commitment by the folks that were involved in the program that we would never see another request for money. They would find a way to operate it. That was my initial discussion a lot, was at that time we were looking at estimates from $85 to $1.15 per capita, if I remember right, for the establishment of the system, and then another 12 to 15 cents per capita per year to operate the system. Well, that starts to become very expensive, when it's all over and done with. And the commitment was made at that time, if my memory is right, to expend up to $20,000. Now, I couldn't remember whether or not that money had actually been dispersed, and what I'm hearing from Dean is no, it has not.
That's correct.
And when I read this in my packet, I was trying to figure out, is somebody coming back after more money from what
No,
we'd
sir.
already talked about? And I'm glad to hear that that's not the case, because I wasn't sure when I read this packet if they'd spent that $20,000 that we'd committed to a year and a half ago or a year ago, and now we're back after more money because I certainly am not interested in having that discussion.
As a resident of the county, I'm grateful that you're watching with that kind of sharp eye.
So, I guess I would kind of defer to Dennis and Dean to tell us about that money, because I know that the commitment on behalf of this board was to fund up to $20,000 for the establishment of 211. But we required that a solid plan and timeline be developed, and that's what these gentlemen are here tonight presenting to us, I believe.
And Commissioner Wheelock, you mentioned that your understanding was that that was the money to go into it, and they would look for other funding sources. And from what I'm hearing from them, that's exactly what they're doing.
Right, yeah, and that's what I'm hearing.
You just want to make sure we weren't double dipping.
Just to make sure that we have identified I don't want to create a system that we can't operate.
Right.
And we got to come back next year and ask for money to operate it. And I'm hearing that we found alternative funding to continue the ongoing operation of the system.
Commissioner Richardson.
Yeah, pretty much in the same vein. Just to clarify, Dennis or Dean, this board would have to take action to actually appropriate the money?
No.
Or has it already been appropriated?
It has not been appropriated at this point, but before...
We have a resolution, but we actually have to take a vote to spend the money, if you will.
Well, what I would like to do, if we continue with or agree with the resolution that was done, I believe it was in December, and I apologize for not having it
Actually,
here.
it was November. It was the day before Thanksgiving.
Before we close our books in 2009, we can either designate those funds and set them aside, or we would have to amend our budget in 2010. It doesn't sound like they're going to request the funds until 2010. We could simply amend the budget in 2010 to cover that appropriation.
Commissioner Richardson, are you having any more questions?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the committee? You have a motion?
Seeing as though we made the committed, I'll make a motion that we appropriate the funds.
I'll support.
Okay. It's been moved by Commissioner Thomas, supported by Commissioner Maxbauer, to authorize the county to release up to $20,000.
Appropriate.
Appropriate.
Amend the budget.
No, you doesn't have to amend the budget if we appropriate it now, right?
Designate it from '09.
What are the two options, right?
Well, the motion is to break...
And then they'll draw, we'll pay them when we get the bills.
If I can just explain or answer Commissioner Thomas's question, I would bring a formal budget amendment back in 2010 to cover that appropriation or your action tonight.
Okay. Are you fine with it, Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner Maxbauer? Certainly. All right. Further discussion. Commissioner Fleeks.
I'm not going to support the motion. And since our conversation the day before Thanksgiving last year, I've yet to find one constituent that I've asked about 211. They've got no idea what it is. None. And like I stated a year ago, 911 started out to be a real cheap deal. It was going to cost the landline phone owner 3 cents a month max. Look at what you pay today on your phone bills. 211, and particularly in this time of economic disaster, I just cannot see appropriating any money for it, particularly when we turned down $4,600 earlier for TART trails. And here, this money is going to go down to Muskegon to support a call center. And like I stated last year, if the people need the help that bad, I think they can find it without 211.
Commissioner Thomas.
I agree with you, except that we made the commitment last year. Yeah, but I voted no last year, and I'm still very much opposed.
I think I did last year. Commissioner Wheelock.
I guess the comment that I would make is I think that who this program, the end result of this program is going to help individual citizens. But I think the the coordination that it makes for all of the human services agencies, if you will, to make available and to create a clearinghouse for what services are available. And hopefully, the big thing to me that's hopeful about this is it will eliminate any duplication of services. Because that is absolutely important in these economic times, that we do not duplicate services. And we have a number of human service agencies in this community, all of which are doing a great job, but I'm not sure we're doing it in the most efficient manner that we can possibly do it. I'm hoping that a clearinghouse that itemizes what services are available, who's providing that service, who has that service available today when someone needs it. I think that is what we get out of this program. As long as the commitment by this board to fund the $20,000 is the extent of our commitment, and they are pledging overwhelmingly that they have identified the operational funds of this program.
All right. Commissioner Friend.
Steve, would you mind answering one question, another question?
Of course.
You're employed by United Way?
I am. I'm the executive director.
And you're paid a salary?
I am.
Is there a national executive director of United Way nationwide?
There is. Brian Gallagher is his name.
Could you tell me what his yearly salary is?
I don't know. I could research it and probably find out. But I don't know.
Well, in 1965, the person that held the post at that time made $100,000. And I guess my point is, and I haven't given it to United Way since then, because I was making a whole lot less than $100,000 a year, and I would really like to know what your salary is, but I'm not going to ask you that.
It was published in the Record Eagle when I took the job in August of last year.
Well, I didn't see the article, so you're safe.
Record Eagle, I didn't see it. Safe
All right. Commissioner Friend, did you have a comment before we voted?
I was just going to note in the minutes that Commissioner Wheelock and I agreed wholeheartedly.
All right, with that, we'll call the question. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hooper,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.
Friend,
Yes.
Stepka,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Axbauer,
Yes.
Police,
No.
Okay, motion
Wheelock.
passes.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you very much for your time and your patience for sitting up and listening to this. I do know that once it's up and running, you will be getting reports on a yearly basis. The year-end report that you got here shows what happened at Muskegon Call Center and how many calls they've been taking. You will continue to get that kind of report, but it also will talk about the services that are being used by our people in our community. And so we will have an idea as to how much services and where they're being used for. And so we can start to look at where should we spend our money? How should we do this? Because the need is greater in this area than it is over in this area, and that will give us that kind of input. So we really thank you very much for your allowing us to be here and for your putting the money in for 211 and for the people in the community who will be able to need and be able to access those services. Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Thanks,
Herb.
guys.
Thank you, Steve, for coming.
Appreciate it.
Last time you were talking, I had to go get a ruling.
Moving on to equalization. Lori, thank you for waiting.
I was very adamant about no the first go.
In October,
Want to get yourself introduced to the audience?
I'm sorry, I'm Lori Spencer, Equalization Director for Grand Traverse County. In October, this board met in apportionment session as required by law, and at that time, I had indicated that we had several ballot proposals on the ballot that may require revisiting the apportionment report again in November. We did have one election in November, which did pass, and that's the Forest Area Schools 1 mil sinking fund. We also had a revision of the L4029, which is the tax rate request form that came in from Peninsula Township with their police protection changing from .1971 to 5 and the senior millage of .0212 added. So during this process of the apportionment report, another thing that happens in conjunction with it is I calculate all of the tax bills for Grand Traverse County. We don't print the tax bills, but I calculate them, and Bill Rokas works with me to check the various totals and warrants. We have a very complex tax system now in Michigan with not only the ad valorem roll, but the DDA rolls, the brownfields, the Renaissance zones, the land bank authorities, our TIF districts, and it is complicated, and we go through and make sure that we've calculated it here at the county and then work with the local treasurers when they actually calculate their tax bills to make sure that we agree on both ends. So it's a system of checks and balances. So the apportionment also plays a role in that. And what I would need from the board is approving the revised apportionment report.
Moved by Commissioner Thomas, support by Commissioner Friend. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you for a quick and concise report. Can I ask the board's forgiveness and see if we could go right to referrals, knowing that I got to skedaddle out of here sometime a little after 7 o'clock, and the easy part is under the finance section. So if you wouldn't mind, if we could go right to referrals, and then we'll come back to finance.
Ross will be there about an hour. I've been through 2 of them.
Have you?
Taken over an hour.
All right. So can we go through referrals first? Is that okay? All right. Item A, under referrals, we have road commissioners' retirement benefits referred by the October Board of Commissioners on meeting, and that is in your packet on page 39. So that information is presented on page 39 and 40. My understanding is that was asked in terms of if we can present that information at the next Ways and Means meeting. Commissioner Max Bauer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was the one that did ask that this be presented to the full board, and I have a question for Dennis. Dennis, retired road commissioners continue to get health insurance benefits. Is there any other part-time employee that when they retire continues to receive payments towards health insurance?
I'm actually going to defer that to Dean. Do you know Dean? We'll talk this out. I'm kind of thinking we did have some employees who were part-time that are in our pool of county employees who do receive some health insurance when they retired, but I'm not positive of that.
There are, I think we had 3 bargaining units that negotiated for post-employment benefits. I don't know off the top of my head what units those would be. That is one of the reasons why we have an OPEB liability, because we do, pay for those costs into the future. For the majority of other bargaining unit employees, the county is providing a fixed amount of funding to help pay for that health coverage after retirement. It's currently capped at $100,000 annually. I don't know if that answers your question.
I guess we would have to check for sure. My recollection, Commissioner, is when we went back and we looked at the people that were in that pool, we had a couple of employees who were drawing like a total of several $1,000s. They were drawing about $2,000 for their total retirement in a year. They are eligible, I believe, to be in that pool, and so my guess is there are some that are part-time, but I'm only basing that on a very small amount of retirement. But we would have to verify that for you. I can't at this point.
Go ahead, you still have the floor.
How long does this go for retired road commissioners? And it's my understanding that they actually can retire after 10 years. Is that correct?
I believe 10 years is correct. And based on this, I guess...
Can anyone else in the county do that?
Retire after 10 years?
After 10 years, can anyone else?
Yeah, county employees can
Part-time?
retire... No, I don't know part-time. We don't have very many part-time employees. County employees can retire, are vested after 6 years, and
Okay.
can retire at age 65, or, 65, I believe. In terms of your question about how long can this go, this retirement, as I read it here, and this information was prepared by the Road Commission, Mary Gillis. It says retired commissioners, Medicare age 65 and older, so I think the answer to that question would be for the rest of their lives from age 65. If I'm reading this correctly.
Clarification, then we'll go back to Commissioner Max Bauer, if I could. Dennis, is it my understanding that the action, let's see if I can get your attention.
Yes.
It's my understanding that the prior history of the board passed a resolution just setting the salary, and also they passed a resolution saying that they would allow road commissioners to participate in the road commission employee benefit program. So my understanding is that the road commissioners, when it comes to the benefits laid out here, as well as the retirement benefits for healthcare, all the other road commission employees receive that benefit. That is my understanding. Is that your understanding?
Yeah. You asked this question before the meeting.
Yeah.
We tried to find the documentation on it. I can only go from recollection at this time. My recollection, when you looked at this issue over the last several years, the commission wanted to know the history of it. When we pulled all that information, and it was back in the 80s and 90s, that the county board actually passed a resolution, I believe it was 94, where you passed a resolution that said the benefits of the road commissioners would be that the road commission benefits could be the same as the employees get in terms of health benefits. And that was accompanied, when we did our research, by an opinion by Dennis LaBelle, the county prosecutor at the time. And I'm going from recollection here, but my recollection was that there were two funding mechanisms, two laws that you could use to compensate road commissioners. And the one law said if you made the determination of what the benefit was, that if the county board dictated that, then it had to be paid for out of the county general fund. And so what we deduced from that research was that was the reason the county board said you can set it the same way your employees do, because as we kind of determined, it prevented any kind of liability to the county general fund. That was what we were able to deduce. Obviously, we didn't go back and talk to the people who set it back at that time, but that was kind of what we were able to deduce. I was not able to get my hands on those late this afternoon, so.
Okay, back to Commissioner Maxwell.
Okay, a couple more questions. Dennis, if a road commissioner retires after 10 years of service and they're not 65 or older, do you have any idea what that costs county residents?
I do not, Commissioner.
Is it more than what it costs for 65 and older?
I honestly don't know if they're eligible for any health insurance between the time they retire and when they turn 65. I don't know the details of that. I'm not saying they're not. I don't know. Do you know?
I don't know what the cost is, but I believe pre-65, they pay the full premium cost.
Okay.
So that would be like most of our employees do.
So they get the insurance, but they have to pay for it.
Correct.
But we don't pay it out of the general fund.
No, you don't pay anything out of it.
Road commission pays it out of their
That's
fund.
correct.
Okay. Commissioner Max Bauer, you have any other questions?
Well, I don't have any more questions, but I do have a comment, and that is, I know it's not a great deal of money. I have absolutely no problem with road commissioners paying for their own health insurance after they retire. And again, it's not a great deal of money, but it's the principle of the thing. They're part-time employees. In 2008, 12 hours and 40 minutes, and I understand that they prepare for meetings. I understand they drive to and from. I understand all of that. But still, it's public service. And I think this benefit needs to be discontinued.
You think what?
This benefit for retired commissioners needs to be discontinued.
We discussed that either last year or the year before. And
This is a different board.
the retired ones aren't.
No, no, no. I mean, this is a different board than last year or the year before, and that's why I brought this forward.
In the previous, well, you were here.
Yeah, but
I know.
three other people weren't.
3 others weren't.
Well, what the deal was, the road commission had set the retirement benefits and their salaries and et cetera. And when some of those people who were on the board a long time retired, it was with the expectation that that was there. Like Bill Walton, I don't know how long Bill was on, but a long time. How long were you on, Maury? 12 years, and Bill was like 20 or something? Yeah. So, that's quite a length of time, in my book. And if they determined at the time that that was the benefit, who are we to take that away?
I'd like to ask him a question, if I may.
Commissioner Maxbauer, and then we're going to go to Commissioner Wheelock.
Actually, I have a question for Commissioner Fleece. Would you be opposed to discontinuing this benefit for future retired road
It
commissioners?
already has been. We did away with it last year, or whenever we had the last discussion. I believe it was last year.
No, we didn't.
That benefit does not, the sitting road commissioners now do not get that when they retire.
I think we need a clarification on that, but I believe we did not take action on that.
Oh, yeah, I believe we did. We certainly
have
did.
staff research it, but I believe we did not take action on it because of the issue of if the board dictates what benefits they can and can't have, then we end up paying for the benefit structure of the road commission. That's why we dictate they can either participate in the plan that's currently offered by the employees or they cannot. If you start picking and choosing what they get, then the Board of Commissioners has to pay that liability. And I believe that is the reason why we did not take action at that time. But we certainly can have staff look into it and report back at a future meeting.
We need to have staff go back to those minutes. and
Yeah, I'd
see.
like to take a look at it.
Commissioner Wheelock.
Mr. Schneider, I believe you're probably going to be the best to clarify this. Are we correct in that the discussion is if we know that road commissioners are eligible for the health benefits as the road commission employees are? If we dictate their benefit package, is the county then responsible for the cost of that benefit package, not the road commission? Because currently, all of the costs for the road commissioners' benefits are funded by the road commission out of their funding and they receive no general fund from this board.
I don't know why that should change. Apparently, there was an opinion issued years ago that says there is a difference. I haven't seen that. I'd have to look at that.
I guess the point is, you know, it's like sitting here and telling Larry how to spend his money, you know. The road commission has made a decision that their road commissioners should be eligible for certain salaries and benefit package. The salaries we set, and I understand we're responsible for that, but the road commission has set the benefit package for those people, which is in line with the benefit packages that are offered to other road commission employees. I'm not sure how we feel we should be able to sit here and tell them what benefits to offer to their employees or their staff.
Okay, Commissioner Richardson.
I think because it's our responsibility under state law.
I don't necessarily agree with that because I don't believe the benefit package is part of their compensation.
All right. Commissioner Friend.
So I guess we want to definitively find out the answer to that.
It'd be nice if we knew what you really wanted to do, and we could answer that question, you know, contingent upon.
Well, I think the question.
You've asked a number of different questions.
Can
I'm not sure what.
Eliminate the
Well,
health benefit.
I've got 2 questions. One is, I would like to know whether or not, and this would not be for you, Mr. Schneider, it would be for staff. I would like to know whether or not we did indeed discontinue the health benefits for future retired road commissioners, because I'm hearing Chairman Inman say one thing and Commissioner Fleece say another, so I would like that clarified for us.
We will get that for you.
And the other thing I'm hearing is, can we take a look, and this would be for you, Mr. Schneider, whether or not, if we change the benefit package, is this board, out of its fund, responsible for paying that benefit package?
Clarification, when you say change the benefit package, you mean remove,
Any item of the benefit package.
remove the retirement?
No, what I'm
Healthcare
saying is, let's assume that we say we are going to offer health insurance for road commissioners, but we want them to pay 50%. Because we have changed what their benefit package is, are we liable, this board, for that other 50%? Presently, all that money comes out of the road commission.
Or if you change something like the health care benefits for retirees.
Right.
You're saying that as well, too.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Is everyone happy with, to have staff look into the resolution and then ask Prosecutor Schneider for an opinion on road commission benefits, and if they can be separated or removed, partially removed?
I guess I would ask if that's clear enough direction for you.
Is that fine?
As I
Al?
understand it, we had differentiated between at least this question. That is, this commission did, I believe, because they asked the question, eliminate retiree health benefits for future road commissioners, not those who had already served and accrued the benefit.
Yeah, we need to look into that.
We need an answer.
I know that you could do that, but you could not eliminate those benefits from those who had already retired and already accrued the benefit. I believe that question was asked, I believe, last year.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, the question is, did we take action
Did we
on
take
it?
action, but that's for staff.
Yeah.
Now you want to know if you, as the county board, in any way modifies the benefit package of sitting road commissioners, does that somehow make the county board liable for payment of all the benefits?
Yeah.
To road commissioners? Or does it remain the liability of the road commission?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
All right, good. Everybody happy with that?
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to the second piece of that, and that is Commissioner Richardson asked that he be able to discuss the election of county road commissioners. Commissioner Richardson.
Yeah, what this is just to take the 3 road commissioners we have now who are appointed at large and convert them to elected road commissioners, which, if my understanding of the statute is correct in discussions I had with Bob Cooney, means that as each appointment comes due, then we would elect a person in place of appointing them. They'd be elected countywide. That would mean that the road commissioner's term, who expires, for instance, at the end of 2010, would be, that person's replacement would be elected at the fall election in 2010. And then every 2 years, a new, each road commissioner would then be, appointed road commissioner would then be replaced by an elected road commissioner.
Are you making that motion?
Yes, I am.
All right, is there a second?
I'll support.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Richardson, seconded by Commissioner Maxbauer, to move forward with future road commission positions as elected by the general public.
And if I can just comment.
At large.
At large, yes, because that's, as far as I understand it, the only way we're allowed to under state law at this time. And the reason is that I do think that this is an important enough position and a visible enough position that the public should have some say over the selection. The road commission has already made clear that they, wish to put a millage on the ballot next year. Now, obviously, that's up to us to do, but a lot of how the public feels about this millage, I think, can be expressed in how they feel about the road commission themselves. And I believe that they should have that choice.
Discussion. Commissioner Thomas.
I'm in favor of going with elected road commission. I'm in favor of going with 5. But I'll never vote for it until it is by district. It's just, I don't think, you could have, right now, you could have 3 people elected off the same road. And as far as I'm concerned, that doesn't represent the people. And anybody I've talked to out in my district feels just about the same way I do about it.
All right.
I am in favor of it. I think I'd love to see it elected, because the people would have a voice, but until they change the state law, they're not getting me to vote for it.
No. Just a point of information, the prior board, when we discussed this item, asked if we could get involved with our legislature and the Michigan Association of Counties to see if it was possible to have road commissioners elected by district. I took the challenge down to the Michigan Association of Counties. They thought it had a lot of possibilities. We went out and visited a number of boards and commissions around the state, and they were very positive on the idea as not necessarily a mandate, but it was a third option. You can appoint, you can elect at large, or you can elect by district, and it would be strictly an option that the Board of Commissioners consider at any given time. So as in most pieces of legislation, it takes about 12 months to get a draft bill together. The Michigan Association of Counties does have a draft bill with regard to elected by district, and they plan on having a number of state senators and state reps at the beginning of the year, given the budget situation and where we're at the end of the year. Everything has to get reintroduced anyways, if it doesn't pass by the end of the year. They plan on having a number of state senators and state representatives to bipartisanly support this draft bill beginning the first of the year. And I've indicated to them personally that this is something I have really worked hard on personally down there to try to get this thing moving. And they've indicated to me that they have somewhat of a comfort level that, either we're going to get the job done by next September or we're not. I'd like to have this opportunity for elected by district given a chance. Let's see if the state moves on it, and if it's got traction and if it gets approved, then we have an opportunity next September prior to us interviewing for the next road commission appointment to make that decision. So I'm personally, just so you know, I'm in favor of holding the issue of the election at large until we have a determination if we can possibly get this thing passed by next September in terms of elected by district. So that's just my viewpoint. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Wheelock.
I guess the comment that I would make is I've historically always supported the expansion of the road commission to 5 members, and I would support the election, but not until such time as the election is done by district. I believe it is the large populous areas of the city and Garfield Township and a couple of the metro townships, if you will, could certainly stack the entire direction of road construction in this county for a long time, considering you have to remember these are 6-year terms, and that's required by mandate or by the Constitution. You don't have the option of re-electing them in 2 years or 4 years. It's a 6-year term. And so I'm like Larry, I want to wait and give this an opportunity to see if we can have a provision by which they can elect them. It'd be nice if the state would take under consideration at the same time to make that a 4-year term instead of a 6-year term. But as it is right now, the state constitution requires it be a 6-year position, and it does not allow us any provision by which to elect them by district. And I believe the more urban townships, if you will, in the city could control the total direction that road construction in this community goes to in a long time. Having been involved with the Road Commission for a while, I know that they are currently working on projects that won't even be near construction until 2015. We're out 5-6 years, and if you were to stack the Road Commission with a and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but if you were to stack the Road Commission with a group of individuals that wanted a specific area or community to be targeted for road construction, you could effectively take the rest of the county out of road construction for nearly a 20-year program.
All right, Commissioner Max Bauer.
Well, Commissioner Wheelock, we would not be stacking the road commission. The public would be choosing their own representation. And those road commissioners, because they are elected by the public, would be accountable to the public. And if the public does not like what that road commissioner is doing, they can recall them. Right now, if a road commissioner, if the public is not happy with that road commissioner, it takes an act of Congress to remove a road commissioner.
All right, any other comments before we vote? Commissioner Thomas and then Commissioner Richardson.
Yeah, I've got a question for Al. But he's,
We can,
Dean, will you
slap
He's multitasking.
This is just something that the city gets their funding for their streets from an altogether different source than the county road commission does. How could somebody in the city spend the county's money on roads? You might as well elect somebody from Elmwood Township.
you're asking.
I don't. They run their own street system,
They don't,
which is separate from the county.
they don't get different funding. They get MTF funds.
They get different funds.
See, there's a person with the answer right next to you.
They get the city and villages, cities, villages,
They get a
and
separate
counties
different piece of the
access
pie.
MTF funds. They are separate. They are
That's what-
segregated from the counties.
That's what I said.
Okay, no, you said a different source.
Well, they all come, no, their money comes in through this tube and not the county money comes in.
All right,
Yeah, it's from the same place.
all right.
Different
Yeah.
tubes.
Commissioner Richardson.
You're right.
I would say that I am also a strong advocate for election by districts, and I'm a strong advocate for increasing the road commission from 3 to 5. It's just that, time is working against us, and, we first passed a resolution in support of election by district, what was that, 6 months ago?
No, it was longer than that.
5, 6, 7 months?
Didn't pass.
It was sometime in the spring.
Yeah.
And in my mind, let's get it started now. Filing is in May. If we take action now, there's plenty of time for people to get used to the idea that they can actually file to run for road commission. I don't think you'd have any shortage of candidates, and I would say let the best person win, who can best sell their program to the public.
Commissioner Fleece.
I have to agree with Sonny and Dick and yourself.
Okay. Any other comments before we vote?
I'd just like to
Commissioner
give districts a chance also, wait for that to happen.
So the motion on the floor is to have new road commissioners elected at large.
So-
Roll call vote, please.
It's in support of this resolution in front of us.
All right, and he has a resolution presented to us. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Wheelock,
No?
Fleece,
No.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Thomas,
No.
Richardson,
Yes.
Stepka,
Yes.
Friend,
Yes.
Inman,
No.
Hooper,
No?
Okay, motion fails 5-4. All right, moving on to board rules, recommendation, and comments referred from L&A. Commissioner Fleece, Chairman of L&A. Page 44.
What L&A discussed was to set up a committee that would go over the board rules and make recommendations to the board as a whole. And I believe, I don't remember who said it, but they discussed an earlier committee that I believe was comprised of yourself and 2 other members.
Commissioner Max Bauer and Commissioner Wheelock were the previous ad hoc committee that reported back the changes for the board rules.
Right, and that was the desire, basically, of the L&A committee, is to have the board as a whole reestablish that committee with the same people, unless there was other people that would like to volunteer for it, and we would just add more members.
It's a pleasure of the board.
Sounds neat.
Everybody fine with that? I don't know if we need
Sure.
necessarily a motion on that. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Commissioner Richardson?
So can I volunteer to be added to the board then?
Sure.
Yep.
We're
I think-
going to take
and-
any volunteers.
How are we doing this as far as, are we just scheduling the meeting and whoever shows up is on the committee, or
We're
do
gonna-
you need a letter, an
we're
email,
gonna
what?
Schedule a meeting and go page by page and look at the recommendations coming
That's what
in
we did
from
before.
our previous meeting.
Well, if I could,
Yes,
your board rules say that this would be a special committee,
yep.
and your board rules say that that has to be established by the board. So I think the intention of LNA was, I
Right.
think Commissioner Fleece is right, that you would ask today who wants to serve on it, and then that would be put into a motion for next week's board meeting, so it can be established
Do we have a
and
motion?
appointed.
Thank you for that clarification. We have a motion?
I'll
All
volunteer as well.
right, so we have can someone make a motion? Commissioner Richardson.
I move we establish a special committee of the board to review board rules, and that the members of this board would be Commissioner Inman, Commissioner Maxbauer, Commissioner Friend, Commissioner Wheelock, and Commissioner Richardson.
Okay.
Support.
Support, okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, passes. All right.
We all voted the same.
Moving on to law enforcement related services, we have a recommendation from LNA Commissioner Fleece.
Shouldn't have such long meetings, Larry. There's much stuff to do.
Yeah, in fact, for the commissioners that aren't aware of it, I think we had the longest LNA meeting we've ever had. It started at 7:30 and we finished at 12:45. Well, we really didn't finish. We just
Just
couldn't
ran out of
have-
steam.
How many
But you
people
did
did we
have
interview?
Yes, we did interview,
8?
You had 2 hours of interview.
Only
Yeah.
2 hours to do, it's still a 3 1/4 hour.
But still, it was
Plus
long.
the interview.
Remember one day we sat down and had 17 interviews. I said, yeah, you nuts.
okay, we've had a request from the city, and it was discussed at Public Safety. The city would like us to appoint an ad hoc committee to meet with the City of Traverse City members to renegotiate the terms of the Central Records Agreement and other police services. And their intent was to have commissioners discuss it with commissioners. At LNA, we discussed, we thought it'd be far more appropriate to have county staff discuss it with city staff. And I'd like to make some clarifications, and I don't know, I'm assuming the Record Eagle is correct because it was a quote from Commissioners Maxbauer and Richardson regarding Central Records and why should the city have to pay and the townships not pay. I believe it's in today's paper.
That was a correct quote from me.
Okay. I thought it was from Ross.
No, it wasn't from me.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'd like to clarify that for you. If you go back to 1/1 of 51, Sheriff R.P. Weiler is elected sheriff, takes office. At the time, I believe there was 4 deputies and an undersheriff, okay? City police at that time, if I'm not in error, had approximately 22 members on their department. Time progresses, the year becomes 1968. I joined the city police force. There's 23 at that time, sworn officers we're talking. The county had quite a few less. Time continues forward. Pretty soon, the county passes the city. So the city's looking for ways to save money. And you got to remember, the city had their own records department in its totality, as did the sheriff's department, okay? And when they sat down and discussed it, it was agreed amongst the city and the county that they would combine the record services, and they had a formula that they applied to determine how much records, if you will, was attributed to the city, and they did it primarily by complaint number and actual written complaints. And that's how, but what it saved the city was the county agreed to absorb all the overhead costs. You know, the city, in the contract at the time that was negotiated, the city had to pay a portion for the employees. They also had to pay a portion for the paper and the pencils and all of that stuff. Those are proprietary records. If you look at the records today, those records are city police records. They're not county records, they're city police records, as are the other records in the same system are sheriff's department records. So to say that the city shouldn't have to pay, and the town, or if the city has to pay, that the townships ought to have to pay, that's a totally inaccurate statement, because those are proprietary records, and nothing has changed. The city police department still continues to exist with, I believe, 32 members, or 33 at the time. The sheriff also has many, and they're still going by, and they've renegotiated time to time the agreement that funds central services. The city, in my opinion, really gets a fair shake out of that. They get more than a fair shake. Because the city complaints have increased, the county's complaints have increased. When I left, the numbers were like in 24,000, 23,000. That's 12 years ago. Today, they're in excess of 40,000. So, the reason you wouldn't charge the townships, the sheriff's department is servicing their bailiwick. In this period of time, there was a consolidation effort. It was called many things, but basically it was a consolidation. And the city residents overwhelmingly voted every time, no, we're not going to do that. We will continue to have our police department. And it's like, much like the talks the city's wanting to engage in today, which in effect, because of COFAC, is going to be another, let's consolidate here. And I think when the city residents get done speaking, they like their police department. Their police department does a good job. The level of service that, say, the sheriff's department would provide to the city residents if you disbanded the police department would be nothing near what the city police department provides today, because obviously the reason they're even considering it, they want to save money. And you're not going to absorb 32 or 33 police officers, sworn police officers, into the sheriff's department to provide the level of service. That wouldn't happen. If they did away with the city PD, what you're in effect going to, instead of 2 patrol captains, you're going to have 1. Or you may have to have 2 if the force increased enough, but basically the savings are minimal. And the city residents, like I said before, overwhelmingly, and I think rightfully so, they like their police department, they like their fire department, and I would think that they're not going to go along with the program. You know, and everybody's available to talk, but what LNA's suggestion is to the Board of the board is to establish, I don't know what you'd want to call it, an ad hoc committee or a negotiation committee comprised of staff to meet with the city staff. I think it's totally inappropriate that commissioners be talking to commissioners when they have very little knowledge of day-to-day operations or what actually goes on. I think it's far more appropriate for staff to discuss that.
Just a point of clarification, and we'll open it up for questions. So the motion that was passed, as Mr. Commissioner Fleece has indicated, was that we would ask the administrator and administration to meet with the city administration and discuss the central records issue and come back with a recommendation to Ways and Means Committee. The question that Dennis has asked, and rightfully so, is, you know, if we're going to ask, first of all, we want to know from this committee, is everyone comfortable having the administrator come in and negotiate this item, or should we have an ad hoc committee of the administrator and some commissioners, or just some commissioners involved and not the administrator? So we want to know how you feel about the structure of how we might want to go about meeting with the city. And the second piece is, certainly whoever we bring in, whether it's the administrator or the county commissioners, or a combination of both, I think it would be appropriate for those folks to walk in a meeting knowing where the majority of support lies on this board and what wiggle room they have to go in and actually discuss negotiating some stuff with the city. And, you know, we might have a mix of opinions on this board, and I don't know if we can accomplish that discussion here tonight or not. But if we set up a structure, certainly we would need to probably even discuss it now or have a future meeting and talk about what are the parameters that we would have a comfort level with. But before I call on you folks, I just want to let you know if I got to leave or not. But my personal feeling is I think it's a legitimate question that the city has brought up.
Which portion?
The issue of central
You have
records.
two issues. You have central records,
Yes,
and you have police service.
yes. And I don't know if we're dealing with the police services side yet, because the motion at LNA was dealing with,
It was both.
The motion covers both of them.
covers both? Okay, all right. You know, I think the city has brought up a legitimate question. I think we either have to come to a conclusion that we're either going to absorb the cost, or we're going to have staff or the administrator to come back with a recommendation where the cost is equally distributed among all community policing officers. I mean, it seems to me that it's either we're gonna expend it, or we got to cost share it evenly around the, you know, the pool of community policing officers. That's just my opinion. But with that, we'll open up discussion. We'll have Commissioner Wheelock and then Friend, and then Richardson.
Well, I believe probably a motion is in order to have discussion. So, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we direct county staff to enter into negotiations with the city of Traverse City in regard to the issue of central records.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there support? Supported by Commissioner, moved by Wheelock, supported by Fleece. Discussion.
Okay. Now, the discussion
Wheelock.
piece of that, you know, I believe that the county administrator negotiates all the rest of the cooperative agreements we have with the city. The amount, what portion of this building they have ownership with, what portion they pay for rent with, what their portion of, you know, IT services are. I think it's appropriate that he negotiate this piece also.
Okay, discussion. Commissioner Friend, did you want to speak?
I wanted to clarify what was coming from LNA, and
Okay.
that is that we asked staff to negotiate, so I think that Sonny's motion is in order. But the second piece of that is, we talked about how with the CPO program, the county at this point in time does not have any criteria or any policy associated with the CPO
Right.
program.
Right.
And so one thing that we found would be we thought would be valuable, and correct me if I'm wrong if you're on LNA, but we thought it would be valuable to determine that criteria. So there's a couple different ways we can do that, and I think we need that direction tonight, and we were looking for that from LNA. LNA can either do that as a subcommittee, come up with the criteria for the CPOs, or we can do that as a full board, or we can set up a subcommittee to look at what the criteria and the policies should be for the CPOs.
Right.
But personally, I feel that piece needs to be done before we do any subcommittee meeting with Traverse City Subcommittee.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Richardson.
First of all, the CPO structure hardly works here. I mean, we're dealing with a whole separate police force. It's the only police force separate from the sheriff's office in the county. So I'm not sure we can establish a policy for community policing officers that has that much to do with the relationship between the sheriff's office and the city police department. The second thing is there are real concerns about, you know, whether we can find economies of scale, whether we can find collaboration that benefits both parties here. The request from the city was a request for elected officials to get together with elected officials of this board to start a general discussion of those kinds of issues, of collaboration, overlap, and so forth. I agree that Dennis Aloya is the person to, you know, engage in the hard negotiation once we get to that point. But I think we're a long ways away from that point. I think we need a general structure before we can get to, you know, the actual point of negotiating. This is basically, on a much smaller level, what happened on the senior center, where, you know, broad strokes were drawn, as to the direction of where we're going with the Commission Aging, absorbing the senior center, and then Dennis Aloya and Ben Byfoss sat down to actually start discussing the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts and so forth of it. So I'm going to vote against this motion because I think we need to have some general discussions at the elected official to elected official level before we turn over to staff.
Commissioner Wheelock and Commissioner Thomas.
I guess the point that I'd make is the biggest difference in the two analyses are, Russ, is the fact that there's currently a contract in place for the county to provide central record services for the city of Traverse City. So any changes to the existing contract are truly in negotiation. We did not have such an arrangement with the operation of the senior center. That's a new thing. You know, we currently have a contract in place by which the Sheriff's Department provides central record services for the city of Traverse City and the city police department. I think they're two separate things. When we start talking about setting policy, and I have to stress that they are two separate issues. The central records issue with the city is one thing. The CPO, the community policing officers, is a completely separate issue.
Yep.
And one of the things that I think you need to be very careful of if this board is going to put themselves in a position where they're going to establish policy for the community policing officers, first and foremost, those are employees of the Grand Traverse County Sheriff, not of this board. And I don't believe we have the ability by which to set criteria by which sheriff's employees will function.
I think we're talking about two different things. You're talking about policy on how those employees would operate.
I don't know. When you talk about establishments of CPO contracts, those contracts are negotiated between the sheriff and the townships, not between this board and the township. We have no authority over those.
What I'm saying is, I don't know of anything in place, and I'm guessing Dennis doesn't either, he would have mentioned this at LNA, that sets up criteria on how we approach offering the CPO program. Whether that's through the county in general, through the sheriff's department, absolutely it should involve the sheriff's department.
It's the sheriff's decision, not ours.
All right. Commissioner Thomas.
Two things. One of them is that we have been talking with the mayor and the
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem, along with Dennis and Ben for all year about different items. The police consolidation or whatever they want to do with it. One of them, central records is another, senior center is another. We have been talking. The other thing is that any discussion that we have about changing the police coverage or whatever it is, the sheriff has got to be involved right from day one. And
Commissioner
he has
Maxwell.
been, but he's got to stay there.
Commissioner Maxwell.
Well, we pay for every CPO approximately $13,000 a year in equipment. The townships don't pay the full cost. So I really do believe that if we're going to talk with the city about CPOs, community police officers, I do believe it needs to be elected official to elected official initially. I would agree, and I have a question for Dennis. On the contract with the city on central records, when does that contract expire? Do you know?
I don't offhand. I have to look at it, but I believe next year, but I think we were in the process of renegotiating it when Richard Lewis left, so I think it's next year, but I'm not sure, Commissioner.
I am going to support this motion primarily because I do believe that we have to take a look at that contract. What I said to the Traverse City Record-Eagle is exactly my opinion right now. I don't believe that Traverse City residents should have to pay separately for those central records.
Whose records are they?
Any more than Garfield Township would get a bill for that central record, those central records, simply because they use a large portion of them, because a lot of the Sheriff's Department calls come out of Garfield Township. We don't bill Garfield Township, we don't bill East Bay Township, we don't bill Peninsula Township, we bill no other township. Why are we billing the city? We don't bill the village of Kingsley. We don't bill Fife Lake. Why the city? I really do believe. I really do believe that we need to direct the county administrator to renegotiate that contract. But I'll go a step further. I think we need to ask the county administrator to think about not charging the city for those central records.
I agree, if the sheriff's department is running the police services in the city, those charges would go away. But I believe you made your statement because you don't understand the community policing officers' place in the county system. I don't necessarily agree with it either, but I remember its inception. The city had the first CPOs. The city has never charged their own residents any additional funds. In fact, when CPOs came in, we had 25 members on the department. I think if you look today, there's 32 or 33. 33 sworn, okay? That's a result of community policing. The county, on the other hand, because the townships were different political entities, they wanted more attention than regular patrol could give them, decided they would charge, okay? And that's how it came to be that the sheriff's department charges a township $72,001, and the county, to assist, pays the fees you're talking, which is roughly $55,000 in a 4-year period. But then the Clinton years came along, and they put some federal dollars in it, and then it went away. But the primary thing is, community policing officers are members of the patrol. I disagree 100% with the way the townships are charged for CPOs, because we, the county board, ought to provide those services at no charge, because the county citizens have already paid for them once, just like the city did. Why didn't the city charge? Because their residents already paid. And if the citizens of Grand Traverse County quit paying their taxes altogether, you wouldn't have a sheriff's department.
Commissioner Thomas.
Well, there's so many different aspects to this. Let's take a little different subject here. How about the jail? What's the percentage of city residents in the jail? You don't have to pay extra for that. If there's somebody in the city arrests and they put them in jail, you're not paying for that. The people in Garfield are paying the same amount. You know, this is a can of worms. It's awful hard to figure out which end of the worm to grab.
All right. Any other comments before we address the motion?
Yeah, I have a question.
Commissioner Friend.
For Commissioner Max Bauer, you mentioned, why shouldn't the townships have to pay then if the city is paying?
Correct. We all use the same records.
But
No. They are two completely separate records. City police records belong to the city fire, or city police department. County sheriff's department records belong to the Grand Traverse Sheriff's Office. They are two completely separate set of records. They're handled differently, they're recorded differently. And I believe Mr. Snyder will verify that. They are completely separate records.
I think I'm trying to follow this, but I think what Commissioner Fleece is saying is correct. The reason the townships don't pay to have a portion of what it costs the administrative fees of central records is they don't have their own police department. That's the simple answer.
That was the point I was going to make.
They're not paying for record keeping. They're paying their share of the employee and administrative costs, the shared cost of the building, just like they pay the shared cost of this building.
Can I make the point I started? And that would just be, what you're suggesting, if you're saying the township should pay as the city pays, you're suggesting then that the sheriff's department, the county, actually charge the sheriff's department, because those township CPOs, again, they're not their own entity. That is the sheriff's department. You'd be asking us to charge ourselves.
Okay, any other questions? No. Comments? All right. We have a motion on the floor to...
Would you restate the motion?
Please.
I'll take a shot at it, Chris, unless you want to repeat it.
No, let Chris say.
Let Chris read it.
Chris?
To My understanding is that it's to direct staff to enter into negotiations regarding the central records contract.
All right. All right. All ready? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Fleece,
Yes.
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Hooper,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Stepka,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
and Wheeler.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes. Wow. All right. Moving on to the ad hoc committee for the evaluation of the Siegel study. Hopefully
Hold
that
on a
will be a
second.
little
What do you
easier.
want to do with we had talked about the developing criteria for the CPO so that when
Right.
anybody approaches the county requesting a CPO.
Well, there's two things. First, based on what I heard from Mr. Schneider, the contract is between the sheriff and the townships.
Okay.
So we need to pull the sheriff in and say,
Sure.
we'd
Sheriff's
like
gotta
to
be here.
involve ourselves in this discussion with you of policy. So I think that would be the thing to do, and you could do that either through a subcommittee of commissioners that meet with the sheriff, or you could do it through staff, whatever you choose. But we can initiate that discussion with the sheriff right away and say, you know, we would like to, the county board would like to see some formal policy, because your role may not be to approve the contract or the terms of the contract, but the sheriff would certainly be interested in working with you, because every time he wants to add a community police officer,
We have to
he
fund
needs
it.
money from you in order to fund it. So I think it's very appropriate to have that discussion from that
So-
aspect.
Commissioner Max Bauer.
And that's exactly correct, Dennis. And one of the things that I think I would like to see discussed is whether or not the county is going to continue to subsidize the cost of a community police officer to the tune of $13,000 a year. And here I go again, asking the question, if we subsidize a community police officer at $13,000 a year, why don't we subsidize city police officers for $13,000 a year? Now, I'm just saying, do we, as a county board, want to continue to subsidize community police officers to the tune of approximately $13,000 a year, or do we want to charge the townships the full cost?
Well, you wouldn't have it.
Well, I think you've,
Wait, hang on for a second. Commissioner Friend had her hand up, and then we'll go to Fleece.
I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to initiate discussions with the sheriff's department to outline criteria for the community police officers program.
Support.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Friend, support by Commissioner Max Bauer, to repeat that motion if you could, Commissioner Friend.
I'm not sure.
Set a policy?
Direct staff to initiate discussion with the sheriff's department to outline criteria for the community police officer program.
Okay. Pretty broad, but, yeah, Commissioner Fleece.
I think they know, Dennis, you understand the point.
I'm sorry, was that was a motion?
Yes, and
Okay.
support.
But
Okay.
Commissioner Inman just said that's very broad. You understand the direction of that motion,
Oh,
don't
yeah.
you?
Yes, well, I think I do, yeah.
but see, I think, and I understand the reason why, but CPO shouldn't even be mentioned, really. It's a patrol service that's going to be determined, and that's what we ought to call it. It's a police patrol service that the method will be determined by the sheriff in the county and the city, police chief. CPOs, when the city started it first, way back when, we assigned them to sectors. The sector was a geographical portion in the city where we took all the statistics and figured out this is where we got a problem. We put the extra person there. In the county, it's similar, only they use townships, and that's where the difference began to vary, is because the sheriff, instead of having or assigning X amount of deputies, and he used his deputies county-wide, you had like Garfield Township that said, hey, we'd like a little more attention. Well, that was a convenient term, but it's really a patrol service, see? And, you know, it might change 10 years from now. So I think we need to talk patrol services.
Commissioner Wheelock.
I guess the other piece of that can of worms that you have to talk about, though, Larry, is the fact that the whole community policing option, came about as part of the COPS grant.
No, it was in existence
Well, it was in
prior.
existence, but as far as the expansion to the townships came with the COPS grants. The federal money that was made available to the townships for a 3-year period to subsidize what was at that time routine patrol. And the townships established that, took the money, hired, the sheriff in turn hired his employees, which he assigned to those geographic areas, which they used the township borders as the line. As that money expired, many of the townships continued to fund those positions at the rate that, we've all talked about, and that rate's renegotiated every 2 years or every 3 years? 4. Is it 4 years?
It is now.
Well, because it used to be 2, and then it got expanded. Anyway.
They'll cover 4 no, they cover 3 if the township will cover the 4th year.
Right.
If they don't do it, they won't do it.
But the point is that you have to remember, even though these are community police officers by title, and we put signs up that says community police office, the fact is, they're still Grand Traverse County Sheriff deputies.
Mm-hmm.
And they can be dispatched to any place in Grand Traverse County at any time. And they are. They are routinely pulled out of their geographic areas. And, that's the difference between them and the city police department. The city chose to have their own police department, and they are not under the authority or the direction of the sheriff, so therefore they cannot be considered the same as a community police officer or the sheriff's department.
In fact, the city charter says that the police department, this is back in 1940 now, when they adopted the charter, it says the only thing you need to have in the city for a police department is the chief of police. So they could really get rid of everybody except Warren today.
I guess my issue on this is that I'm more concerned about the philosophy of the board in terms of how many more community policing officers can we absorb in our budget. That's item 1. And item 2, with the possible premise from the city, either adding a number of community policing officers and downsizing their department, I certainly, before we do enter into those discussions, I certainly would want to have some indication from the city residents and the city commission that's the direction they really want their board to go in. And thirdly, with the optimal discussion that had occurred, is that, the elimination of the city police, which I don't think they can do because of the charter that they have, but that's the legal opinion, is that the replacement of all city officers with county road patrol, community policing officers, and the sharing of those expenses. I think we got to come back down and say, what can we really afford? I mean, if the city came to us and said, we want to add 17 community policing officers for the city and we're going to discharge our current road patrol officers, I think we got to come back and say, is that something that we can really do with our budget? Hang on.
Legally, you can't do that.
And
you can't replace a city police with a community police officer.
That's if you go for a matching grant.
Well, you won't get the grant.
But I think they're looking for the sharing opportunity on that. So, as a part of this policy thing, I think this board has really got to do some thinking about, the financial the implementations of additional funding for community policing officers and how many more can we really absorb in our budget. So I just bring that up. Any event, is there any other discussion on the motion?
Just a reminder, don't forget, those community police officers are employees of the sheriff, not the employees of this board.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion on the floor. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Stepka?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Maxbauer?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Hooper?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Dennis?
So on both of these issues tonight, you discussed, you established a process. Okay. The rest of your discussion, which I think is absolutely necessary, is what's the position of the board on these two issues. And so what I will do, what I intend to do now is go to the city, go to the sheriff, and say, what are the issues you see? I'll go to the city manager and say, if it passes next week, I'll say, what do you want in terms of central records, police? And then I will be right back to you to say, this is what the city's looking for. What's the position of the board that you want me to go to negotiate? So I just wanted to, that is the process I'll use unless the board tells me to use something else.
Come back to us or public safety?
I think it has to come back to the whole board. I mean, because, we can have one discussion at public safety, but this frankly might be one of those issues where you want to have a special meeting among yourself to determine what your position is, what the board's position is, so that I have something to go back credibly to negotiate.
And the other thing is when you're talking with the sheriff's department, that is, get something together to bring back to us too, because as you'll be looking
Yeah.
for funding for those positions, it needs to be approved through the board as well.
That's what I will explain to the sheriff, that it's in his best interest to work on a policy, because that's going to, because it'll certainly be affected when it comes back to ask you for money.
And that criteria or policy, whatever you want to call it, should
Right.
really get at the heart of what the intent of that program is.
I agree.
Okay,
Let's move on before
I'm gonna-
Roberts changes his
Yeah.
word.
All right, I'm going to ask to be excused. Whitewater Township's having their meeting with Rothschilds on the septic treatment presentation, and they've asked for me to be there. So I'm going to ask Commissioner Hooper to continue as chair of the meeting, with the next item being under referrals, item D, and then he would go back to finance and cover the rest of the agenda for me.
And while you're shuffling out of here, I'm just going to say that the presentations that I've heard that Mr. Childs is making, the meetings have really been very polite.
Well received, yes.
I couldn't believe it at Blair Township, how polite the people were. And they asked some good questions. But I haven't heard anybody, I wasn't at Mayfield.
You, ask Beth, she was.
I haven't heard anybody get up and thump.
I'd rather gone to your meetings than.
I think people are starting to realize that, hey, maybe $44 isn't so bad.
I think it was both at East Bay and at Mayfield that night. I was glad that I went to both of those meetings. And they have a very nice township hall at Mayfield.
They do, it's
Very
new,
nice.
or
Very
fairly
nice.
new.
Very nice.
We used to go there once a year.
Okay,
Bye, Mr. Chairman.
Larry, do you want to give us a brief overview of what you guys had in mind about the
Yeah.
Siegel study?
See if I can get the verbiage right here. We decided that we should establish a committee to look at the validity of the Siegel wage and benefit study. Not necessarily to just say, is this dollar figure correct or this salary proposal correct, but to study, or to take a look at the study to make sure the information and so forth that was used in the study is valid. And the suggestion was from us that we have a 7-member board, and we'd have 3 county commissioners and 4 citizens, and Dennis has requested that 2 of the 4 citizens be human resource specialists, so you have some expertise in the panel, with at least one public, one private sector of the human resource.
Do you have anybody in mind? How would you recruit those folks?
They're advertised.
You have to advertise?
Yeah.
I even have somebody in mind, but I haven't talked to them. So. I said I even have somebody in mind who would be good for this one.
For the citizen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone who's spent years.
Yeah, see, that's ideal.
Years in human resources setting wages, so.
I think we should ask them to do an editorial that says "Help Wanted" for people to apply.
I don't think we'll have any problem getting volunteers.
Do we want to make a motion then to appoint this commission?
No, you
Yeah.
gotta advertise.
First?
Pardon?
You gotta advertise.
No, you need to pass this through
need
to
to pass
the
a
Board of
motion?
Commissioners.
Yeah,
Right,
a motion
right.
to advertise.
Now, a motion to form a committee? That's what,
Yes.
and then you advertise for that, yeah.
Right. I would make a motion that we establish a 7-member committee to study the validity of the Siegel wage and benefit study. The committee should be comprised of 7 members consisting of 3 county commissioners and 4 citizens, Two of the four citizens should be people that have been in the HR, Human Resources Specialist, with some experience, one in the private sector, one in the public sector, and then two at-large citizens.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to bring everybody's attention to the letter from Dennis, November 5th, that's in your packet. Goes through basically the charge of this subcommittee, and I just want to make sure that everybody was aware of that, the points that they will be looking at, and see if there were any additions or changes to those, because it's a whole lot easier to do that now than to wish later that we had looked
Right.
at something else or an additional point.
So you're suggesting that the motion then incorporate the contents of the November 5th?
The charge of the
Correct.
commission, yeah.
Which is the indented paragraph.
That's
right. I would amend my motion to include that.
Ross?
Support.
Yeah, I'll amend.
And, okay, it was motion by Felice, second by Richardson. Sonny?
I guess the important thing is, you know, is when we talk about the validity of the study, I think it's important that we talk about the criteria by which the study was done, which is this indented portion, not specific dollar amounts or recommended salaries that were included, because, you know, we can get into a million different arguments about whether or not that job's worth that kind of money. I think as we discuss the validity of the study, we simply have to look at the tools that were used. Are these accepted methods by which you establish what is a reasonable study? And when we get into what the economic research and the cost of living coefficients and things that were assigned to those dollar amounts, you know, I think, you know, we can't get hung up on what the recommended salaries were for those positions.
Well, those are the results of the study.
Results,
This is looking at
well, I know,
the
but
validity and the process.
I can guarantee you this discussion is going to come around to an argument about what those dollar amounts that were recommended are.
I'm sure you're right.
Bruce?
Okay, Dennis?
Yeah, I just want to get a clarification, because I'm hearing something a little bit different than what I read the motion was. If I understand the motion was to approve the recommendation of the county administrator to move forward and establish a committee to determine the validity. In my recommendation, and I just want a clarification so we don't do something other than what you suggested, on the second page of my recommendation was that the committee should, or that the LNA committee should consider establishing membership on the committee, which I suggest would include up to 3 county commissioners and 3 to 4 members not associated with Grand Traverse County. I would suggest that those 4 members all have a human resources background, and that at least 2 of them be current human resource practitioners, with at least 1 being from the public sector. So I was saying something a little different than what I heard. I was saying they all have a human resource background, and 2 of them be current practitioners, because someone could be out of it for 15 or 20 years and may not be up to speed, but still may have the basic understanding. So I just ask that you, whatever your decision is, you clarify that one aspect of it so it's clear to us.
Hey, Larry?
Do you have a problem if 2 were just citizens at large?
I don't really have a problem with that, other than they're not going to have any kind of expertise in I would question, all I would question is, what do they lend to the process of establishing, what do they lend to the evaluation that can analyze the validity of a human resource process? That's my question.
I think a different perspective and life experience. Obviously, we're going to set up an interview process to interview people that are interested, and perhaps I would be wrong, but I would think that a couple citizens at large, just to get really a different perspective, because if 4 of them are human resources and 3 are county commissioners, you know, what are we going to decide that was different or good?
Well,
this way it's objective.
Let me give you a different
All right.
different suggestion. Let's say, for example, that you were going to set up a committee to evaluate a technical process of arrest that the sheriff used. Okay, but a technical process. a citizen might come in and say, well, I don't think that was right, but what technical expertise in arrest, well, let's do a different one. Let's say in firearms safety. What technical expertise can they offer to that if they don't have any training in it? So if we're really looking at the validity of the process, you're evaluating whether the technical process was appropriate. And, you can have citizen members of it, but if they have little background in what a wage and salary study is, I question what they're going to lend to the process.
Are you willing to negotiate? How about if we go? It's not mine to negotiate, it's whatever you say. How about if we go, well, yeah, but I know, we got the rest of the board members. What about if we do 3 that are HR people and 1 at large?
Well, how about you do 2 current practitioners and 2 at large? How about that? I'll
That'll work.
negotiate with you.
Current practitioners.
How hard is it to find that many people?
What's that? 2 current practitioners?
Yeah.
Well, every time I've gone out to hire somebody, when we've asked somebody to help, they've helped. So
Oh.
I think, I'd really like to see you get 1 from the private sector and 1 from the public sector, The schools, for example, have always been good about lending someone to a process like that. And here's what I don't know. I don't know whether the private sector uses the same kind of a mechanism or tool. Small companies who have a human resources director, I know don't, because in my interviews for HR directors, when I brought people in who came from the private sector, and I said, tell me what you know about wage and salary studies. Well, we don't do that. We look at, whatever everybody's paying in the area. You know what I mean?
Look at the market.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is, if you're really going to get at, is this a valid study, you got to make sure you have some expertise on there that knows how these studies are conducted, that can determine the validity of it. That's all. And it doesn't have to be everybody. Board does whatever. I just wanted to clarify it, but I hope you'll have 2 current HR people, because I think that have some experience with this, because I think they'll be able to help you determine whether it's valid or not. So if you want to have public on there, I always think it's good to have public, as long as there are some real technical people on there that can look at it. So that'd be fine. I just wanted to clarify, because I did think...
I would agree with you, Commissioner Fleece, that, it's good to have different perspective on there, but I see the commissioners as that different perspective, as none of us are really HR background people per se. So, but then again, I don't see changing your motion to tie our hands. What if we don't get enough applicants that have HR experience, but we do get good applicants, maybe some with a financial background or particular business background that we find valuable. So I would say let's leave the motion as is, but as LNA is doing those interviews, keep a real perspective of getting the people with HR background on that committee.
I think that's a great
And our friend will be
idea.
sitting in the meeting, right?
If you ask me to, yeah.
You'll
I'm
be
great.
sitting there
Chris,
in
yeah.
LNA.
Yep.
Well, I think there are people out there, Beth. For instance, I will tell you that I worked for an HR person in Shell for a decade. I can tell you that the prosecutor has somebody in his office who works for him right now, who worked in HR as an assistant for a decade. You can't work for somebody in HR for that length of time and not learn something.
Sure.
So there are people out there that are citizens at large that I think Commissioner Fleece is exactly right, could bring a different perspective simply by their work experience. And I don't think those people ought to be discounted.
No, and
Okay.
that would allow that to happen. We just leave the motion as is, and we can value that experience. I didn't mean to discount that experience.
All right, do we have an agreement on that? Leave the motion as is, and then we'll go from there. I think let's, we have the motion to form this committee, go out through advertising through the paper, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Okay. All right, now we can move on to
Excuse
finance.
me, will that go back to LNA then,
That will-
to
yes, I-
determine which county commissioners will serve?
Or we could just have the LNA commission, we're going to LNA just as, there's 3 there.
There's
No,
4
can't do
there.
that?
I think
Can I
what we should do is just have anybody who has an interest submit a letter of interest or email to the LNA, and when we look at those, we'll just appoint them along with the other people.
Or why don't you give a letter to Dennis over the week, and then Dick can appoint him at the board meeting, next board meeting.
Well, you won't be ready to do the rest of it.
We won't be ready to do the rest of them at this point.
Okay, well,
It'll take longer than that.
Sometime between the next, now and the next LNA meeting.
right, that'll work. Just about, yeah, give your information to Dennis, I would assume, or you want to do it just to Larry?
Yeah, that's fine. Larry Fleece.
Yeah, Larry Fleece, the chairman of the LNA. Volunteers, apply to him. All right? Now we can move on to finance.
The general fund trial balance through October 31st is on page 26. Cash balances are about $19.4 million, 10 months into the fiscal year. Revenues are ahead of expenditures at about 3.4, well, a little less than 3.4 million. If you turn to page 27, just a couple of comments. I'm comparing revenues to date through 10 months, 2009, with the same period of time a year ago. Tax revenues actually were slightly ahead of the collection rate a year ago, and the dollar amount is $577,000. We still have about $1.8 million in tax revenue to collect. That's not uncommon at this point in time. The federal money are grants, actually at this point in time, that were not budgeted. They're for the records management software, so that's a good variance. The item that causes me the most concern in terms of revenues at this point in time is our charges for services category. Although we're ahead of where we were a year ago, there are some places where we're lagging. The surcharge, 911 surcharge revenue is $178,000 ahead of last year's amounts, primarily because of the switch to the new method that went into effect July 1st of 2008. So that's a big reason for that increase. However, our district court revenues are down about $110,000 compared to where they were at the end of 2008 through October. On a positive note, though, because I don't want to just present bad or I guess negative variances, the Register of Deeds revenue, same point in time this year compared to last year, is $21,000 ahead of where we were a year ago.
Just a quick question on the district court. Now, are those people not paying their fines, or just not as many people being fined? Is that how?
I can't answer that, to be honest with you. We've heard from the district court administrator that their activity is down. To counter that, they have actually reduced their staffing somewhat by 1.5 FTEs, I believe.
Well, it was 2 in the budget, but then we added a half just last week for that special program. So.
Correct, and those were due to retirements that they're not going to replace. So those things help balance this out. The other concern that I have with revenues at this point in time is something that will correct itself, but generally at this point in time, the state withholds payments from us. I don't know why they do that. We have contractual or grant obligations in most cases, but the cash flow simply is not coming in. The wireless funds that we normally receive through dispatch, we had those funds last year, the first week of November. State can't tell me at this point in time when they're going to be paid. They do tell me that they're going to pay them, but the state is withholding money from us at this point.
Even though their budget process is complete, they've completed it, haven't they?
It's a cash flow. They're holding on to their money to pay their bills, meet payroll, things of that nature. The funds will
keep
come
the
through.
interest. That's right.
But that's fortunately for us at this time, our cash positions are fairly strong, so we're doing fairly well. And then also, if you notice on page 27, total revenues to date this year are $1.2 million higher than they were a year ago, and we're at 86.8% of budget versus 85.8% last year. On page 28, expenditures are slightly ahead of where we were, about $78,000, and things are tracking fairly well there as well. We're 78% of budget this year versus almost 80% same point in time a year ago. And the big item, the variance, is a timing on the fourth quarter appropriations. Last year, I made most of the appropriations in October. This year, I held off, did not make those until November.
We're kind of like the state.
Yeah.
Well, but these are payments to ourselves in most cases.
all right. I couldn't help it, I had to say it.
That's where they got the idea from.
That's the finance guy, you know, he never follows the same schedule. On the next item then are the budget adjustments, and I'm going to walk you through these real quick. On page 30, the first adjustment is for the mobile data units for central dispatch. And then the large item on the bottom of the page is the funding that we have secured for the Twin Lakes Parkland Improvement Project that has not been budgeted to this point. And most of those funds have been received as of to date. And then also, on page 31, this was the referral from Public Safety to cover the 2 corrections vehicles. $38,000 was approved. The funding for that was completely contained within the corrections budget, the machinery and equipment line item, as well as the food line item. Due to our jail count, for most of the year, we are accruing some budget savings in the food line item. Today, the count was 139 inmates. And the last adjustment for corrections, on page 32, our overtime is tracking higher than what we budgeted. For the year, we budgeted $120,000. I'm projecting we'll need $140,000. This is also covered within the corrections budget that was approved by the board. And just a point to note, in 2008, we spent $174,000 in overtime.
Wow.
So we'll be $34,000 under that amount, and that's largely due to being at full staff for most of the year. That's the only adjustments that I thought I should comment on.
Okay, Ross?
Support.
Okay, we got a motion for approval and support. Any further discussion? Okay, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Cooper?
Yes?
Friend?
Yes.
Stepka?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Lees?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, motion carries. And next?
The next item really is just for discussion at this point. I'm in the process of, we have been requested, well, let me back up a step further. We currently lease a small office down in the lower level of the governmental center. I'm not sure if you would even know where this office is. It sits out of the way. It's in the common area, the walkway or the tunnel between the governmental center and the law enforcement complex. But it's an office of 210 square feet. We have had this lease with the U.S. Government Environmental Protection Agency since November of 1997. They have asked for actually they would like a 10-year lease. I'm a little reluctant to do that, but just as initial, for me to be able to discuss or negotiate this with them, I thought I needed to bring this to you to get some direction. They did want a 10-year lease with 5 years firm. I have not had a chance to review that with Al or Bob. The lease that just expired was a 5-year lease. I'm not sure why they want to go out for 10 years. One of the things, though, that they do like to build into the lease agreement is a fixed amount of rent, either a monthly rent or an annual rent. So what I did on page 36 was I tried to project with a 2.5% and a 3% increase on our current rental rate, what that rent would be using a fixed amount for a 5-year term. I'm not saying that it should be 2.5% or 3%. I simply don't know what I should negotiate at this point. So basically, starting, I guess, with the first item, do we want to continue to lease this office to the EPA.
Would anybody else use it if we didn't?
We have no, they've been there for quite a while. I mean, eventually we would use it, but
Someone would use it, but whether or not they would pay us for it, probably not.
they probably would not pay us for it. That's a good point.
Any other questions?
We could house our cat catcher there.
I think we
Cat
ought to continue the lease in the, for 10 years in the 2 5-year increments, after the first 5, it's renewable for the next 5. And we ought to have Dean, if he's going to negotiate it, get as much as he can.
And I'll be honest, I don't know, I have not had that discussion with them regarding, I needed a starting point.
What was the current arrangement we had?
Well, the current lease that expired at the end of October, we used a 2.5% increase over where it was at 5 years previous to that, which was our current rate, and we grew it into the future with the annual increase and then just came up with the average.
Why don't you go for 5% and let him negotiate whatever he can get, and at least 2.5?
I agree.
Yeah, start high and...
Okay. Chris?
I was just going to say
right.
the same thing, so.
Just give Dean the leeway.
You can always come down.
I can do that.
We just give Dean the leeway, we don't need
Yeah.
motion. Okay.
Well, and I will have the prosecutor review, the document is quite thick.
I think you're right, though, Dean. 5 years with a 5-year extension at both parties' agreement is a good way to go.
Okay, child care fund.
Well, I thought I should bring some good news tonight.
Is there a motion on that? I
No.
know-
No, just
No.
consensus on direction.
Wagging heads.
Yeah.
The,
Every 3 months, they'll be having to pay us, Dean.
well, that would be nice.
The
We
numbers
continue
come down,
to
so.
see favorable trends, not only in the state ward component, but in the other cost categories. Talked with Greg today just a little bit. We're somewhat confident that the number of state wards at this point in time is 6. There were periods of time in 2008 that we were as high as 12 or 14, but this is a major cost component that has really been less than what it has been. But the other expenditure accounts or cost categories are tracking fairly close to budget at this point. So this is a significant improvement over what I reported last month, and Greg was not giving me any indication today that he was expecting any higher counts in terms of, the juveniles, depending on what category they're in. So things are looking fairly good at this point.
That is exciting news. Okay, I guess that covers that. So at this point, we have other. Larry?
I believe you all received a letter from Family Court, Judge Stowe, on Adoption Day.
Oh, yes.
And for the people that haven't attended, or even if you had, that's on the 24th of Tuesday. And he really does a good job on that. And I think it's really be appropriate if we could get as many commissioners there just to show the court we support that. And I was having a conversation with him the other day, and he indicated that the adoptions are down a little bit this year, but still, they'll have plenty there, so.
Do you know what time that was?
Pardon?
What time?
It starts at 9 or 9:30. I can call you and tell you that.
We'll send an email out to everybody to remind you of the time, okay?
Well, he sent a letter.
He sent a letter. I just-
Oh, okay, you have
He
it.
sent a letter, in case you misplaced the letter.
There's a
yeah.
luncheon, too.
I've got mine handy, so.
It's nice to attend something as positive as that.
And they'd like an RSVP, I can't think of her name, I just RSVP'd today. And the judge, when he was talking to me, he said, tell the commissioners if they want to bring their spouse or whatever, that's really fine too. He says, we really appreciate showing what we do, so.
I'll see if I can dig her up.
Okay.
The other thing I'd like to bring up is when we were doing the budget for 2010, Civic Center South, the $25,000 we've been appropriating for that, we didn't budget for 2010, and I had talked to Dennis previous to the budget discussions, and there should be sufficient funds for the 25,000 available in the 2009 budget. And what I'd like to do is put it on the next Ways and Means agenda to have Dean or Dennis identify where the 25,000 would come from, and we would approve the appropriation out of the 2009 budget payable in 2010, though, you know, like January or something.
And that is something we committed to 4 separate payments for $100,000.
No, we did not.
Did we do that? I thought it was a commitment.
Five, actually. Yeah, we did.
We didn't commit the money.
Huh?
We didn't commit the money.
We didn't commit the money because we can't commit
other boards,
future boards.
Yeah.
You know, we might not be on the board. But anyway, I'd like to put that, unless somebody has an objection, I'd like to put that on the next Ways and Means agenda if we could, please.
Police and Inman are the commissioners down there. We'll take it out of their salary.
No, sounds good.
I cover it.
And there was
Okay,
one
Beth.
other thing, I gotta
Oh,
think though,
there's
somebody else will have to talk a minute.
Okay, Beth.
Forgot.
I'll try and fill in for a minute. No, real quickly, I just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Richardson's comments during public comment. It should probably be an agenda item or follow up on something. Basically, are you requesting any follow-up information, or that the policy be complied with even a letter after the fact, or?
I haven't decided to, I mean, obviously, we approved it at the BOC, so really my only possible action would be to move for reconsideration next week. I have not decided if I'm going to do that or not. But,
Well, wouldn't it just would be a letter from Hooper? Is that what the?
No, I'm concerned about the fact that we approved, over $5 million in contracts without any, at least in my case, any knowledge of, some of the conflicts of interest involved, that's all.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So,
I think it was brought to this board's, one board's attention that Jay Hooper served on, was part of all that.
I questioned that 2 years ago, I believe, and
well, quite frankly, Larry Inman, because Larry Inman is the one who sent an email to Bob Cooney back in September of '08, and he questioned it, and Al Schneider responded and said, it would not be unreasonable to conclude that Mr. Hooper, that's Jay Hooper, not Bruce, is both a public servant of the Grand Traverse County Road Commission and Grand Traverse County as a whole, thus requiring that he comply with MCL 15.321 at sequential when contracting with or soliciting a contract with Grand Traverse County. Thus, that is my recommendation.
But he actually, and that's the part I didn't understand, because I had some citizens jump on me, and that's the reason I brought it up. Like I said, it was 2 years ago. And what the deal is, they run like a clearinghouse, if you will. You would go to them and you'd say, I'd like to purchase some car insurance, and I'd like you to shop to find the best deal. And they actually don't receive any remuneration from the county whatsoever.
That's not true.
No, well, yes, it is.
No, it's absolutely not true. They receive at least 1.5%.
They receive it from Priority Health.
They don't get it.
And we pay for it through increased premium.
Well, that's absolutely true, but that wasn't what Commissioner Fleece said, I don't think.
That's right.
We don't pay any money directly.
He said they absolutely don't receive any remuneration.
From the county.
But
From the county.
They do.
They receive it from Priority.
Well, yeah, we don't write a check to them.
Right.
But I can show you back in some of the other documentation that has been provided us from Dennis, that in early 2003, the county evidently made a switch from Blue Cross to Priority. Maybe we'd been sort of, partially in both, and then we went heavily with Priority in early 2003. And at that time, Jay Hooper and Cherry Root came back and said, gee, we're not making any money off this. Those bids we gave you, we're going to raise them up a little because we ought to get a commission out of it. And the county commission at that time approved it. Now, that's not giving them, directly money. I don't know what it is.
So
Short of actually writing them a check.
Okay,
But
Chris?
complying for that, complying
It's all
with
right.
that
I'll
through
just
the
wait.
prosecutor's memo, that would be what, submitting a letter of
I just think that we should have known about that at the time we were, discussing this contract, that's all.
Okay, Chris?
On another
Yeah, but
subject.
see, you're contracting with their firm
It's not your fault.
to shop insurance is what you're doing. They're not providing any product to the Board of Commissioners or the county, other than their shop.
I think Christine had the floor, but I'd be happy to respond to you.
I
in a
do
minute.
have the floor, but I was going to say something on another subject, but I have to respond. Commissioner Fleece, my problem with that firm, Great Northern Benefits, I believe it is, handling our health insurance is that we have never bid that out, to my knowledge. But anyway, I'm going to change the subject just briefly. I have a question for you, Dennis. Dennis, we have as you know, a swim scholarship committee formed, and we have spoken with the new aquatics director about the possibility of giving children scholarships to fill in swim classes, where if she's got like 2 students and she can take 2 more, and it would be advantageous for her to take those 2, we could award the scholarship, et cetera. My question to you is, we asked if we could get a reduced rate. Does permission to do that need to come from the Parks Board, staff, or this board? In other words, if they charge $65 for a set of 8 lessons, and they only have 2 students, okay, if we come in and say, okay, we can give you 2 more students, but we would like a reduced rate of maybe $50 because this is for disadvantaged children, whatever, based on the fact that they're at risk or they have an inability to pay, we've got the scholarship money. Does that need to be run by this board, the Parks Board, or staff, or all 3?
Parks Board.
Parks Board, thank you.
Parks Board sets the fees, I believe, for that facility. Since you bring that up, though, I don't know if Dean has been involved in any discussion. I have a real concern with how that money is going to be handled, that grant from the tribe, and if it's going to be run through the county. I think you'll remember when you and I talked about this early on, I had suggested that we run it through the community foundation so that it was in a place where money is routinely, where those kinds of grants are routinely done. And I don't know really what's going on with it. I don't know if that money is being handled through the county. I don't know if I don't think the county board's made any decision on who should award or how it should be awarded. And some more information, I think, needs to come to the county board on how that's going to be handled. Unless Dean already knows it and has set something up.
Obviously, we received, the payment from the Grand Traverse Band, and it has been receipted in. It's, accounted for, but nothing has been dispersed.
Actually, yes, it has.
Oh, the one item
We spent $25, and I will explain that. When the grant was written, we said that we would target Native American children. And so we spent $25. I called Dean, and he said there would be no problem. We spent $25 to send that money to the Grand Traverse Band for a list of children so that we could contact those children, since we said in the grant that we would reach out to those children. So we've spent $25.
I guess all I'm saying is that there needs to be some structure to the program. I know that originally when you set this, and we were really, I think through your work, the county was fortunate to get the $7,500 we got. But I know you talked about the idea of going out and soliciting contributions from the public and from others to help build a fund, so this would be ongoing. And but I have not had any. I haven't been involved in any discussions about how that was going to be established as a fund in the county.
Could you and I set up a meeting so that we can discuss, perhaps, I can kind of let you know what we've done so far as a committee?
I'd be glad to. I think we need to have Dean there, and I think we should have Bob Cooney there to kind of figure out how we need to get that set up. So,
yeah.
Okay, Dennis, do you want to talk about this Great Northern issue again?
Well, I have two things I want to talk about, and it's in a letter that went to you today. The first thing is, And you may not recall this, but back, I think, in July or August, I went to, when I do my administrator's update, I updated all county commissioners on the fact that because we did not have an HR director, that I recommended that we keep Great Northern Benefits to do the bidding of this health insurance for this year,
Yeah.
and that we bid it out next year.
I asked that question.
Yes. So the point I wanted to make there is the commission, no commissioners opposed that. No one called me and said, no, don't do that. And so we proceeded along those lines. So I just wanted to clear, it's not like, you're right, it's not been bid, but we've talked about the fact that we need to bid that, and I think it was clear from the county commission that it was okay to do it this way because we were in the middle of bidding health insurance, and that next year we were going to bid this out. So I wanted that to be clear. The second thing is there was at least the words Commissioner Richardson used was, there were conflicts of interest, and I don't know who he's talking about, but I want to be clear that if he's talking about me, I ran this all by Al Schneider, and I'm sorry Al left, and I would ask you to verify this with Al. And I asked him if there was any conflict of interest with me being on the Priority Health Board because I'm not compensated. I don't even get paid to drive down there to the board meetings. I'm there to represent government units. If there was any conflict, and Al indicated to me that there was no conflict whatsoever. If I neglected to say it at the meeting, and I'm going to go back and watch the tapes, it was simply because I think we were almost 3 hours into the meeting at the time, and there was lots of discussion, and I didn't bring it up. But there is clearly no conflict of interest. Al reviewed that and made a clear ruling on that before we even began the process. And the evaluations and recommendations actually came from Great Northern Benefits, so I just wanted that clarified for the record.
Okay, Ross?
First of all, you're right, I should have used the phrase potential conflicts of interest rather than conflicts of interest. I certainly don't want to imply that there was a direct conflict of interest. Actually, what the state law requires is that not that we bid the agent, but that every 3 years we bid the program.
Correct.
And obviously, Great Northern Benefits did that. If you look at the 4 or 5 bids, companies that they dealt with before they presented the 2 final bids to us. Having said that, I also feel there's no need to even possibly have an agent, and that's something we need to talk about ongoing.
I agree.
Ongoing. But
we could talk about that.
I still think it's information that, that we should have been given at the start of the process when we weren't. And that's what my public comment was about.
All right. Seeing no public comment, do we have any good public comment? All right, are we going to closed session?
Yes.
Okay, we need a motion.
So moved.
Well, you need to state the purpose.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
right.
the purpose should be to discuss the Ziegler versus Grand Traverse County lawsuit.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we go into closed session for the discussion of the lawsuit pending of Ziegler versus Grand Traverse County.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion to support. All those in favor say aye.
And roll call.
Oh, roll call with Chris, please. I can't speed this up at all.
Wheeler.
Yes, ma'am.
Lees.
Yes.
Maxbauer.
Yes.
Thomas. Yep. Richardson.
Yes.
Stepka.
Yes.
Gron.
Yes.
Inman. Hooper.
Yes.
This will be short, and I don't expect any action as a result of it. We'll go to that back room.
Okay.
You are going to miss the whole.
Okay, here comes Dick. We'll wait for Dick to be seated. But he's ready.
He's ready?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to come out of closed session.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and support. Need a roll call for this too?
Nope.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Support.
All right, all done.
Good man, Bruce.